If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 101. All the Pokémon gathered together, gazing at the dark silhouettes appearing in the sky. First came nearly a dozen Charizard, and behind them were several Dragonite. This time, it was truly a legion of dragons. Roar! Leading the group was that particularly large Charizard that Hikaru was most familiar with. Since it had already used a wood sculpture technique, it was flying at the front with the greatest speed. Following behind it were other Charizard of various sizes, all generally quite large. Among the two Dragonite, one was the same Dragonite that had come over last time. As the Dragon Legion landed, that familiar Charizard took the initiative to greet everyone. Roar! It let out a call upon seeing an old friend, then started rummaging through the box on its chest. It pulled out some gold and silver leaves. It had found these rare leaves again and brought them over as a gift. Ah, thank you, Charizard. The Dragonite behind also flapped its little wings as it landed. The first thing it did was give everyone a hug, including all the other Pokémon. Upon seeing Turtwig, the Dragonite lifted it high above its head, apparently finding this little one quite adorable. Woo! Dragonite lifted Turtwig high overhead. Nah! Turtwig, who had only just digested its meal, was dumbfounded at being held up. It was a bit nervous at the sight of so many powerful Pokémon around, but the Dragonite soon put it down. Turtwig then scurried behind Hikaru, poking out its little head and cautiously observing the Dragonite. Meanwhile, the other Pokémon who got hugged were all happy, only Regirock remained unmoved. Dragonite looked a little puzzled at Regirock. Wait, is this rock figure actually a Pokémon? Could it be that it just hugged a boulder? Noticing the Dragonite's confusion, Regirock raised its arm. Regii. That was its greeting. It had just zoned out for a moment, looking like it had a slow startup. Sigh. It's all inherited from its father, Regigigas. Don't worry about it. Regirock sometimes drifts into memories. It's quite old, so it does that now and then. It's my friend, Hikaru explained to Charizard and Dragonite. Dragonite flapped its little wings in curiosity as it looked at Regirock. It was the first time it had seen a Pokémon like this. Indeed, when you fly all over and meet different people, you encounter all sorts of strange, interesting things. This made Dragonite even happier, so it enthusiastically introduced itself to Regirock. I'm Dragonite, the Pokémon courier from Blackthorn City. Regii. Regirock responded, though Dragonite did not understand. That did not matter, it was still delighted. As long as the other side could understand its words, that was enough. Dragonite is as enthusiastic as ever, Hikaru said with a smile, but then noticed Charizard giving him a slightly annoyed look, making things a bit awkward. Roar! Roar! Charizard, somewhat displeased, urged everyone to get to work. The other Charizard and Dragonite that had arrived with it roared in response. They began unloading the cargo, taking out all the merchandise Hikaru had purchased. The hot air balloon they had been towing was a special balloon used for transporting goods in remote areas, sturdy and durable. Along with the Charizard using Sunny Day to keep the weather favorable, they could overcome just about any bad conditions. Hikaru's Pokémon quickly moved to help. Dowblade used its ribbons to float and carry items, Lilligant used its leaves to hold things, Regirock carried things normally, while Turtwig could only bite down on some small items with its mouth. Nah! Turtwig's tender sprout on its head drooped as it felt disappointed in its own limited ability to help, but seeing the unknown, specifically the letter E form, with no hands at all made it feel a bit better. Unknown. Turtwig, why are you looking at me like that, as if I'm some poor helpless Pokémon? All was bustling with the transportation of goods on Hikaru's end. Many were Pokémon materials, common ores, sands, fabrics, plush materials. Uncommon material, Whimsicott's cotton, high quality. Acquired knowledge, cotton spinner, plus 35% efficiency and quality when processing cotton. Uncommon material, Smeargle's paint, high quality. Acquired knowledge, art aficionado, plus 35% to your painting technique and aesthetics. Uncommon material, Galar Copyraja brass, high quality. Acquired knowledge, artistic coppersmith, plus 35% to quality and artistry of copper products. Uncommon material, shimmer thread, high quality. Description: high-grade cotton thread made from fluffy white cotton, a famous product of the Galar region. Acquired knowledge, cloth weaver, plus 35% to the quality of woven textiles. Rare material, Galler's premium fabric and yarn, top quality. Description: a top-grade fabric woven from wiggly tough and dub wool fur, along with various other high-quality textile materials. Extremely expensive, it can be used to create mysterious items. It's the raw material for making the silk scarf. Acquired knowledge, sewing expert, plus 35% to sewing techniques, aesthetics, and quality. Acquired craft, refined craftsmanship, B+, allows you to make somewhat refined items. When combined with mysterious inscriptions and drawing techniques, it can stimulate part of a Pokémon's power, greatly increasing attack/speed/SP. ATK. Rare material, volcanic ash from the Hone region. Description: although it's volcanic ash found everywhere in Hone, because Hone's volcanic activity is caused by Groudon, the ash is imbued with Groudon's energy and some sort of vermilion mineral, making the soil fertile. It's a very important material for soil cultivation. Acquired craft, volcanic ash glasswork, B, using volcanic ash from Hone and various other regions to make unique volcanic ash glass products. Refined series. This was the most important craft Hikaru obtained from these items, and he was delighted. It was worth purchasing such expensive fabrics. Only high-grade materials can create certain specialized items. There were also some dragon-type Pokémon materials sent over by Lance. Dragon whiskers, claws, scales, skin. Rare material, Dragon Fang, ancient. Effect: when held by a Pokémon, it boosts the power of Dragon-type moves. Acquired craft, Dragon Clan Craft, B+, allows advanced processing of materials from Dragon-type Pokémon and the fusion of those materials with others, producing items that better nurture Dragon-type Pokémon. This includes food. Kin Craft, Indigo Chiffon, Dragon Powder, Dragon Scarf, Heavenly Raiment, Phantom Cloak, Tornado Ribbon. All at once, Hikaru's mind was filled with a vast amount of knowledge related to Dragon-type Pokémon. However, these items felt very unfamiliar. It looked like stuff from a dungeon world. Dragon Tamer's professional knowledge has been strengthened. Dragon-type Pokémon you raise will develop even better. This includes knowledge on how to nurture dragons more effectively. Rare material, Dragon Scale. Description: a hard, sturdy scale. Dragon-type Pokémon sometimes carry it. If given to a Seadra for a trade evolution, it becomes Kingdra. Acquired craft, Dragon Clan Craft, already acquired. After moving all these materials, there were also various precious artworks. They included art paintings and stained glass from Alto Mare, some instruments and musical scores from Byangtown, and retro-style clothing from Rhoda. Hikaru planned to use these crafts as reference while studying their unique effects to learn corresponding arts and techniques. These artworks' effects. The stained glass enhances luck and willpower, the paintings enhance artistry and emotion, and the instruments and scores eliminate mental fatigue and negative emotions. The retro-style outfits slightly improve perception. These art pieces all come from special cities. The artisans passing down these skills for generations never realized that their craft contained something extraordinary. Most people can't detect anything unusual, but for Hikaru, simply displaying these items brings him considerable boosts and gains. The artwork from Alto Mare is themed around the guardians of the water capital, Latias and Latios, and Eterna City's crafts are closely related to the two deities of time and space. Still, Eterna City's musical scores don't contain oration that hasn't been discovered yet. Its meaning is prayer. And look at this, a commemorative item sold by Eterna City, the Lunar Wing. Craftwork, Lunar Wing, replica. Effect, a commemorative item made by artisans in Eterna City, imitating the real Lunar Wing. It seems to prevent nightmares, but stands no chance against strong external nightmares. Hint, by using Clefairy fur and Zeta feathers and a moonstone/wood from the dream world, you can create a high-grade replica Lunar Wing. Chapter 102. Bonus Chapter. The Lunar Wing itself is not a battle item. It is used to summon the lunar Pokémon, Cresselia, and can also be used to dispel someone's nightmares. For people plagued by nightmares, possessing a Lunar Wing could save their life. Aside from that, there were also some rare breeding items. Hikaru purchased a small batch first to try out their effects. Uncommon material, refined iron powder. Description: a high-purity iron powder produced artificially. Feeding it to Steel-type Pokémon can strengthen Steel-type energy. Acquired knowledge: Steel Breeder Steel-type Pokémon breeding plus 20%. Uncommon material, ghost tea leaves. Description: a very refined black tea infused with ghost-type power, difficult to obtain. The Pokémon called Synopsis may inhabit these tea leaves. Acquired knowledge: tea culture expert, you've mastered the art of tea. Plus 30% deliciousness when brewing tea. Uncommon material, soul sand. Description: sand filled with ghost-type energy. When placed in water, it bubbles. Excessive contact may drain one's spirit. The Pokémon called Palos sand is the source of such sand. Acquired knowledge: spirit sand nurturing, using soul sand to raise ghost-type Pokémon grants plus 25% growth. Uncommon material, pom-pom seeds. Description: seeds from the fluffy head of a whimsicott. Rich in nutrients, beneficial to both humans and Pokémon for nourishment and strengthening. Acquired knowledge: grass growth plus 25% growth to grass-type Pokémon. Rare material, miracle seed. Description: a rather rare seed of life that does not grow. When held, it boosts the power of grass-type moves. Acquired craft, seed mutation craft, B. Using this breeding technique, any crops you plant may produce special seeds. Combined with specialized seed mutation knowledge, you can produce seeds beneficial to grass, ground, fairy, and other types of Pokémon. However, these special seeds cannot sprout and may affect the yield of plants. Apart from these, there were also some breeding-related books. Once Charizard and the Dragonite finished unloading their deliveries, they pulled out some Rage Candy bars from the box and started eating. However, Charizard recommended Hikaru's berry juice service to its kin, prompting Hikaru to have an idea and take out rare candy and poke blocks. Roar! Charizard blinked a few times, then ate the rare candy without much hesitation. It tasted great, making it lick its tongue all over. Then it took a bite of the poke block. Ugh, bitter. Charizard stuck out its tongue, but being diligent by nature, it could accept any flavor. Once it finished those two items, Charizard felt multiple surges of energy erupt inside its body. Grr! Charizard's arms suddenly flexed with muscle. Roar! A blast of flamethrower shot straight into the sky. The other Charizard, also finished with their share, did the same pose, bulging veins on their arms, muscles swelling, excitedly spewing fire skyward. For a moment, it was like a grand fiery festival, making the temperature rise. Hikaru was somewhat puzzled at the effect of the poke blocks he made. When Turtwig ate them, all the nutrients got absorbed by its grass-type energy, leaving it with a bloated belly. Yet these Charizard turned into muscle heads right on the spot. So it boosted tough and smart. Awesome! Charizard felt its body had never been so strong. Indeed, each time they delivered goods to this odd craftsman, they always got some weird form of enhancement. This feeling was great. Dragonite looked at the flexing, fire-breathing Charizard, breaking out in invisible cold sweat, and eyed the poke block and rare candy for a while. Finally, it decided to eat both at once. Then its eyes widened, joining the muscle-flexing party. Roar, roar! Dragonite felt its mind becoming more active, mood elated, power rising. It felt like it could fly from Johto to Unova in one go without stopping. Since I only have one Pokémon who really tastes anything, I didn't expect this stuff to be so effective. So this is powerful poke block, hey! Hikaru stroked his chin thoughtfully. This might sell really well after I get my breeder or Pokémon nurturer certification. It's all thanks to watching that video by Adam from Lily Cove. From now on, if there are any questions about Pokémon breeding, just check his videos. Although the editing means I can't glean the crafting techniques for free, I'm no slouch at craftsmanship either. As long as I can replicate them once, I'll fully master the corresponding craft. Taking a glance at his own Pokémon, Dowblade and Hisui and Lilligant were studying the poke blocks, while Turtwig warned them not to overeat or they'd get a stomachache. As for Regirock, it had no mouth and did not need to eat. However, after helping Hikaru move everything, Regirock seemed deep in thought. The H-shaped pattern on its face kept flashing, making Hikaru curious. He asked, and discovered. What? You're saying you want to copy my workshop setup, turning the Rocky Mountain ruins into a place for Pokémon to trade goods with each other? A Rocky Mountain Ruins snack shop. But your only goods are basically rocks, right? Selling evolution stones, maybe? Hikaru stared blankly at Regirock. Regirock, for its part, was mumbling about whether it should awaken the other two giant guardians of the Iceberg Ruins and Black Gold Ruins, it had been a long time since they'd seen one another. Wait. Something interesting crossed Hikaru's mind. Regirock selling rocks, Regis selling ice blocks, Regis Teal selling iron? Those three guys are basically gatherers of natural resources. Exactly what did they learn from the ancient Shinto civilization? If the Shinto forest ends up turning into something bizarre because the three Regis become material merchants, I guess that traveling merchant Valo not showing up anymore won't matter. Hikaru mumbled. Oh, right. That grass idea flower you gave me last time, there's a field of them somewhere in the forest, right? Hikaru asked about that flower, and the H on Regirock's face flashed mysteriously. It mumbled in a low voice. Not only are there special flowers, but also some new things near the old Shinto cemetery, where an incredible vein of stones left by ancient people remains. If Hikaru wants them, it can take him there. But there is a wandering presence in that area, always lurking and refusing to leave. So better wait until the official start of the Rocky Mountain Ruins restoration before going. Hikaru helplessly turned again to the horde of dragon-type Pokémon, stop flexing and hurry up to load the goods. After unloading the items Hikaru bought, there was also a shipment of his own to be sent out. Charizard finally remembered its proper job and gave a mighty roar. The other Charizard and Dragonite all responded enthusiastically. The place immediately bustled with excitement, as if hosting a rave. Careful not to damage my goods. Seeing this energetic group of dragons, Hikaru realized for the first time how tough it could be dealing with them at full excitement. No wonder dragons are said to be so powerful. One or two might be no big deal, but if there are many gathered, the destructive potential is immense. Fortunately, they did not forget their real job. They packed and sealed everything carefully, placing the large items into hot air balloons. Once done, they all regarded Hikaru with friendly expressions. Your friendship with the Charizard and Dragonite hordes has greatly increased. Charizard patted its chest and roared twice at Hikaru. If you ever run into anything, come find us. In the Johto region, the dragon flock of Blackthorn City has influence. Next time we come by, we'll gather more special materials for you on the way. Watching them fly off, Hikaru wiped the sweat from his brow. Now that a large batch of materials had arrived, many items could officially start production. There were also those dragon-type materials, those suspected dungeon world items that intrigued Hikaru. But first, he had to work on creating that new Shinto secret medicine he had just obtained. The primary goal in making this medicine wasn't to sell for profit, but to raise his own Pokémon. After sorting the delivered materials, Hikaru began preparing the secret medicine. In a sense, this concoction could be considered a type of secret remedy. The world's oldest pharmacy is said to be the herbal shop in Kianwood City, Johto, famous in the games for its secret potion that cures any ailment but is extremely potent. After a while, the pills were shaped. Hikaru was initially planning to have Turtwig test one, but given that Turtwig had just been forced to digest all those poke blocks, feeding it a strong tonic might cause issues. So Hikaru took one himself first. It definitely did not taste good. True medicine tastes bitter but is beneficial. Shortly after, a powerful force surged through Hikaru's body, making him shiver momentarily. Immediately, it was as if he could move more freely. Strength, jumping ability, and mental speed all seemed slightly enhanced. Even minor health issues he normally overlooked vanished without a trace. This feeling was incredible. So, it works on humans too, though all it really does is strengthen the body and eliminate ailments. Only when Pokémon eat it can they fully absorb its nutrients and enhance their physical limits. Chapter 103. Meanwhile, outside the workshop, the Pokémon gathered around to examine the pile of breeding items. Dowblade lifted two jars, one containing refined iron powder and the other soul sand, and a pair of imaginary bubbles popped up near its two sword handles at the same time. So the way to use these might be, grinding them down. For a Pokémon without a mouth, simply absorbing the steel and ghost-type energy in these materials would be a huge waste. After that absorption, the iron powder and sand would just become regular stuff, making this a one-time huge expense. The workshop had only just started to turn a profit, so it could not afford such reckless usage. As a craftsman, one must consider how to maximize the effect of these two jars of breeding materials. Dowblade started pondering. Although generally speaking, sand can't be used to sharpen blades, this is soul sand, which differs from normal sand. Using a grinding technique should yield impressive results. Dowblade set down the iron powder, then waved its ribbon at Hisui and Lilligant. Lilligant held two bags of seeds, the miracle seed and the pom-pom seeds. She and Turtwig had been inspecting them but turned around when Dowblade called. She saw Dowblade shaking the jar of sand in front of its blade and understood right away. So that's it, you want to get polished. Lilligant set down the seeds, came over to Dowblade, and raised a leafy arm to pour out some soul sand. Upon opening the jar, the ghost-type energy began to diffuse. However, items sold online as breeding aids wouldn't be dangerously cursed. Though imbued with ghost energy, they contained no harmful curses. Dowblade's two blades both emerged from the sheath. One of them drifted in front of Lilligant, lying horizontally. Lilligant looked around, found a roll of cloth, spread it on the ground, and set the sand on top of it to catch any spillage. Mixing ghost-infused sand into the soil or grass might cause unpredictable plant growth if it mutated badly, that would be a problem. For some reason, Lilligant felt a surge of excitement. She had wanted to try polishing for a while. Back when she was still a petalil, she had demonstrated some skills with her leaves, gaining strange knowledge and abilities. Now that she had evolved, she could use her arms to carry out the polishing. So, green light glowed on Lilligant's leaf arm. This was a leaf blade grind. Swish, the soft soul sand spread across Dowblade's blade. Lilligant used her leaf blade move to polish Dowblade. It was just a simple test, of course, so not all the sand would be used up. She understood only a trainer could produce the highest level creations. She was just an apprentice after all. Dowblade found it quite enjoyable. The sand's ghost power seeped into its blade bit by bit, and the sand on top was gradually diminishing, causing Lilligant to watch in curiosity. When the first sword was polished, the second sword's turn came quickly. Lilligant was moving swiftly now, and after both blades had been polished, Dowblade felt significantly better. Indeed, using soul sand for polishing had a tremendous effect. The ghost energy in the sand was almost fully drained, leaving the soul sand material itself to vanish completely without a trace. But, that refined iron powder. Dowblade looked at the other jar. The best use for iron powder would be smelting, but Dowblade, a steel-type Pokémon, would take damage from fire. Is it really time to do a Forge the Blade special? Meanwhile, Lilligant sensed a slight boost to her fighting-type energy. The polishing work itself was also a test of strength, a form of training. Hisuian Lilligant has trained, and its fighting-type energy has risen. Oh, you're already studying those items. Hikaru came out after finishing the Shinto secret medicine and saw the scene, prompting a notification in his mind. Not far from his feet, Turtwig was staring at the two seed pouches, periodically shaking its shell and turning its head to peek at its back. Once it saw Hikaru, its eyes lit up, and it came over with the seeds in its mouth, apparently wanting Hikaru to see if there was a place on its back to plant them. Those seeds can't sprout. They're nutrient items and battle gear. Plus, the miracle seed is way too big for you to carry on your shell. Turtwig sure wants to try planting everything on its back. The pom-pom seeds are meant for making powerful grass-type food, and there are only 2 miracle seeds. Perfect for Lilligant and Turtwig. Lilligant nestled the miracle seed among the floral crown on her head, letting the grass-type energy fill her up, making her quite happy. Hikaru watered Lilligant, causing her flower crown to bloom more vibrantly as life energy nourished her. You have nurtured Hisuian Lilligant. Her grass-type energy has increased. For Turtwig, Hikaru reconditioned the soil on its back. Turtwig's shell was too small to bury the miracle seed inside, since that seed was about half a palm in size. So Turtwig could only bite down on it. In the soil on Turtwig's back, Hikaru mixed in volcanic ash from the Hone region, said to contain traces of the earth god's power, making the soil more fertile. However, to the people of Hone, volcanic ash can also lead to certain illnesses. It has pros and cons. Turtwig felt this trickle of energy, perking up considerably. You have nurtured Turtwig. It has gained experience and growth, storing nutrients for future development. Its ground and grass-type energies have risen. Dowblade floated over, holding the jar of iron powder, asking Hikaru how to use it. Refined iron powder is indeed best used as a forging material, but I also have another use for it. Dowblade stared at Hikaru, suddenly thinking of something. Could it be steel power foods? Wait, can you really treat it as a cooking ingredient? It can be used as food, yes. Iron powder can also be considered medicinal. Hikaru gave Dowblade a quick lesson, picking up a dictionary from the pile of books on the ground. Here's a modern language study book called a dictionary. You can write ancient text, so I bought you this. If you can figure out modern script. Before Hikaru could finish, Blade got excited. If it can understand modern script, it can go online and curse those scammers. Hikaru. Is there a chance you are learning to read so I can better train you, not so you can verbally assault people online? Blade took the dictionary, forgetting about the iron powder and soul sand altogether, and began studying intently. It had learned ancient writing in the Old Kingdom, so it understood the basics of how to learn a new script. It was all the same principle. Even though the modern written system is different, as a ghost-type Pokémon, Blade's memory and learning capacity are formidable. Actually, aside from these specialized breeding materials, many other Pokémon materials I've purchased can also be used for breeding. Hikaru murmured, but Blade was fully absorbed in the dictionary by then. Speaking of steel types, one can't overlook metal coat. Hikaru had already produced that item, a sticky gray metallic substance that can be applied to steel-type Pokémon to enhance their power. Iron powder can also be used to make metal coat. Additionally, there are items shed by various steel-type Pokémon, feathers from Skarmory or Corviknight, fragments from Magnezone, Metagross, Steelix, and Forretress, brass chunks from Copperajah, even the liquefied iron of the mythical Pokémon Melmetal. Long ago, that Pokémon was worshipped for its ability to produce iron. But I couldn't find a steel gem online. If I had one, it would be even better for breeding. Hikaru muttered. At that moment, the age pattern on Regirock's face flashed. It made a mysterious sound, indicating that while it didn't have a steel gem, a friend of its might have something better. Once the Rocky Mountain ruins are restored, shall we go look for the legendary black gold? Hikaru blinked. Registeel's Black Gold Ruins. Chapter 104. There's always something good inside the three Regis ruins. Regirock personally confirmed this. The so-called black gold is the metal forming Registeel's body, and there's still some in the Black Gold ruins, just like the embedded stone in the Rocky Mountain ruins. I always wondered if such a material existed, but never thought it would be so close at hand. Hikaru rubbed his chin. He had to obtain black gold. It seemed Regirock truly intended to awaken its two siblings in this era, so the three pillars could open a shop together. Regis could serve as a fridge, for sure. For the rest of the day, Hikaru did not do more work. Though orders had been increasing lately, handmade goods inherently take a long time to ship, and some items aren't urgent. He had already arranged the necessary tasks. Over the next week, those tasks would be gradually completed. He had also gained some breeding insights from many of his clients. Hikaru decided to use a few free hours now to read. First, he picked up Ghost-type Pokémon and the Nature of Souls. All those books scattered on the ground were taken inside. Blade carried some with one ribbon while still clutching the dictionary in the other, fully immersed in study. After finishing the move, it turned its back on everyone in the corner of the room, occasionally letting out low yu-yu murmurs. Lilligant and Turtwig exchanged glances and shrugged. They could not read, so they couldn't learn from those books. Lilligant decided to go hone her carving skills. Through carving and polishing, she could overcome the negative aspects of her own ability. Turtwig looked left and right, then trotted to the door to meet Regirock's gaze. Nah. Will you help me train? Turtwig felt it was lacking in strength. Everyone was busy trying to get stronger, but it had no clear path to improvement. It couldn't read the books or do carving, it was simply relying on the soil on its back and its trainer's nutritional care. This felt a bit shaky. Regirock gave Turtwig a thumbs up. Your thinking is correct. If you only keep boosting energy without practical training, you won't optimize your move usage. Though your trainer focuses on crafting rather than combat, if you want to get stronger, battle training is essential. Since you've asked me so sincerely, I must help you out. Regirock glanced at the unknown E on the wall. You want to train with us too? Unknown. E looked puzzled. Me, train? What would that accomplish? I only know hidden power. I can't do much. Password correct? After muttering to itself, it suddenly seemed to recall something. It lowered its voice toward Regirock and Turtwig. Though I'm just a single unknown that can't do much, if many unknown gather, we can accomplish something incredible. Like, creating Pokémon. Regirock waved an arm, startled. You guys are the same type as my dad? Do you have slow start? Unknown E stared speechlessly at Regirock. You're not too polite, are you? It knew Regirock had no malice, its personality was gentle. But Unknown was certainly aware of Regigigaz's existence. That was the Pokémon once entrusted by the original one to keep the elemental plates. It created 5 kinds of giants, comparable in some sense to Arceus. Anon, Unknown. Denied Regirock's statement. Anon. The Pokémon we create are illusions of the heart without the power of the creator. We can project our inner visions into reality. Not long ago, we even helped a certain Pokémon get born, bringing it from an ancient time into today's world. Nah. Turtwig perked up. It knew about that, the Dream Dragon Dowblade, the trainer, and Lilligant often mentioned, right? Anon. Yes, you catch on quickly. Looks like you do pay attention to other Pokémon's conversations. By the way, in order of capture, that dragon was number 3, and you are number 4. Unknown wiggled its body. Turtwig mumbled about never having seen it. So, was it strong? Unknown got excited, eagerly recounting the story of that night's battle between the Medicinal Elite 4 member, the cancelled Straight Sword, and the ancient dragon. Even Regirock became fascinated. Whether or not the story was exaggerated, the moves and destructive power were indeed formidable. After all, it was a dragon-type Pokémon, a mythical creature of great strength. That shouldn't be surprising. Nah. Turtwig asked, so, do you plan to create it here? Unknown remembered Hikaru's words and shook its head. That big dragon is already somewhere in this world, waiting for the trainer to bring it home. Out of courtesy, I can't recreate it, and it might lead to unexpected problems. In fact, that one was accidentally created in the first place. We originally wanted to make Suicune in a dream. Sure enough, creating the 3 legendary beasts can be a bit dangerous, so we ended up with something else. Anon Unknown added one more comment. Even if many Unknown do gather, creating powerful Pokémon might risk losing control. Hence, if we do create something, it cannot be too strong, we must ensure it can be defeated. Also, we can't practice near the workshop, it might be too dangerous. Regirock's H pattern flashed. It gently touched Turtwig, suggesting Turtwig train with it first. Once Turtwig gets a good feel for battle, then Unknown can create a Pokémon for the next step. Anyway, as for a training area, it knew just the place. Nah, Turtwig scurried over to Lilligant, telling her it was leaving with Regirock and Unknown for training. Lilligant was a bit puzzled looking at the 3 Pokémon, but simply patted Turtwig's leaf. Lily. Come back soon, I'll make soup for you tonight. And so the 3 Pokémon ventured into the Shinto forest. Regirock led them to a patch of woodland, where all the surrounding trees were scarred by cuts. Quite a few had broken or toppled, forming a natural arena. Nah. Turtwig sensed the powerful aura left behind by some Pokémon. Regirock pointed at a dented spot in the ground. Previously, there was a Scyther here, the same one causing trouble at the Rocky Mountain ruins. That hollow in the big tree was formed when Regirock punched Scyther and sent it flying. Actually, Regirock had only come to gather stone, but Scyther rushed over to challenge it, babbling who knows what. Regirock didn't understand, but after one punch, Scyther never came around again. Turtwig. It realized Regirock wasn't actually that mild. One punch likely knocked the previous day's meal right out of that Scyther. I hope I won't get punched into the sky next. Since there were no wild Pokémon here, it was the perfect natural arena for sparring. The surrounding forest dwellers largely disliked fighting, which was why that strong Scyther had tried to claim this spot. Turtwig perked up, and Regirock moved to the other side of the clearing. Unknown floated overhead to referee, having seen humans do this many times, so it was used to the process. Anon before the match began, Unknown laid out the rules for the village. One was that Turtwig could not use the powerful herb on its back since it was precious. Also, no solar beam. Nah. Turtwig nodded seriously. Of course it knew that. Besides, banning solar beam could train its other abilities. I'm really weak. Even though everyone says I'm strong, I can't do much at all. So I want to grow under limitations. That's the plan. Chapter 105. Dowblade stayed in the corner, diligently flipping through the dictionary. Why the corner? Because that's its personal little nook, giving it a sense of security and ambience for reading. Got it. Another word memorized. If it's going to be the most reliable right-hand sword of the king, mastering modern script is essential. Setting aside the important task of cursing scammers online after it learns to read, this also lets Dowblade consult breeding books anytime. That will further polish its moves and skills, using what it learns to help Hikaru even more effectively. It had been too busy to study until now, so it turned out this timing was perfect. The sound of pages flipping drew Hikaru's attention from his computer. He glanced over toward the corner. Flipping pages so fast, did it really memorize anything? Some ghost-type quantum wave reading method? But yet, a dictionary is quite dull. There are no pictures, just dense text. Dowblade, being a ghost type, wasn't bothered by that. A human might get drowsy pretty quickly looking at such tiny words. Besides, the dictionary said modern writing has multiple forms, mentioned in the foreword. Dowblade's two eyes met each other. Yes, that's hardly surprising. Back in the ancient kingdom, writing systems were messy. Some small kingdoms even liked inventing their own characters. Dowblade remembered seeing scholars who walked around carrying 2 or 3 scrolls each day, mumbling as if reading divine scripts. Messy writing systems aren't good. The modern era is much better. After 1,000 years of evolution, it's more mature. Dowblade muttered to itself, soon reaching the dictionary's final page. The thick volume plopped to the floor. It had only taken an hour to finish. Hikaru was stunned. He was still carefully studying the nature of souls, cross-referencing spiritual knowledge in his head, analyzing every sentence. He had barely made a dent in it, and Dowblade was already done? Clack! Dowblade picked up another book nearby, the Universal Handbook for Breeding Ghost-type Pokémon, a common reference sold at the market. There are many trainers across the world, raising all sorts of Pokémon. For better guidance on training ghost types, a variety of how-to manuals exist, often compiled by breeding houses or professional breeders from different regions. Dowblade opened the book. It had memorized most of the dictionary's text by rote, so now it was time for a practical test. Using its soul to match up the words' meanings, it could piece together entire sentences and grasp the text's significance. It was a highly educated knight in ancient times. This was nothing. Preface: breeding ghost-type Pokémon is relatively uncommon. Usually, it's done by people with spiritual abilities, so typical, everyday ghost breeding methods are limited. The purpose of this book is to help normal trainers raise ghost-type Pokémon. The author's signature identified them as a top-tier Pokémon breeder. Seems the writer is pretty skilled? Dowblade felt a bit confused. That's by an evaluator, Hikaru explained when he saw Dowblade puzzling over the text. In every region, the best Pokémon breeders take the evaluator exam. Those who pass become Pokémon evaluators, also known as top-tier Pokémon breeders. They can gauge some of your stats just by looking, stuff like fairly decent ability, outstanding potential, average power, that sort of thing. Dowblade paused, wiggling its blade as if wanting to say something but then falling silent. It did sound amazing, but so what? There were already plenty of strange humans in this world. Its own trainer was one. The text mentioned that ghost types absorb energy from matter, something observed in many ghost Pokémon. So using materials rich in energy can enhance a ghost type's power. At the same time, items tainted by curses and resentment are excellent for ghost type Pokémon, though not recommended for normal trainers to gather. Nor is it recommended to explore ruins or graveyards without proper credentials. One might risk death or legal trouble. A normal ghost-type trainer can buy safe amulets or standard spooky items from spiritual specialists, or eat berries and crops grown near graves. It's best to have someone accompany you, and stay away from places of ancient legends or seals. Keep in mind, these foods are suitable for ghost Pokémon but cause adverse effects in humans. To avoid having one's energy drained by ghost Pokémon, it's important to have items and food that boost friendliness. But some ghost types grow so attached they want to share life and death with their trainer forever, such as certain Yamisk. Dowblade. A sword can be speechless, and Dowblade was exactly that. It stole a glance at Hikaru, who was absorbed in ghost-type Pokémon and the nature of souls. This twisted love scenario relies on the trainer being weaker than the Pokémon. If the trainer is way stronger, then what? The book doesn't say. Oh well, I'm not a knight who would betray my monarch. Next page. Hikaru noticed Dowblade peeking over but didn't find it odd. Reading a book and having questions is natural. Ghost-type Pokémon and the nature of souls. Human souls can also give rise to ghost Pokémon. Sometimes, a Pokémon's death can spur the birth of new ghost types. Intense emotions may also lead to the emergence of ghost types. All of these connect closely to the human soul. If there is a strong bond between you and your ghost Pokémon, the emotional link in your soul will affect them. In this sense, the soul of a ghost type is like a blank canvas. Through training and intimacy, it becomes more and more like its owner. My Pokémon may give others an eerie feeling for that reason. Hikaru read from the notes given by Agatha, in some translations, or possibly another ghost type specialist, or perhaps an Elite Four who specialized in ghost. He found it very enlightening. The parts about emotions and willpower opened his eyes. Many ghost trainers do not realize that ghost types are fundamentally about souls, and focus only on tangible items and closeness, overlooking the deeper truth. You've read a file on soul research. The author reveals the link between ghost-type Pokémon and the soul. Your psychic knowledge has increased. You've gained a new comprehension. Advanced psychic knowledge, you can fully understand ghost-type speech and transcribe it. Your soul's resilience has greatly increased, as has your spiritual power, which can empower ghost-type Pokémon. You can summon wild ghost Pokémon via spiritual sensing, and have mastered spiritual scripture. You can also nurture a ghost-type Pokémon's soul. A deep purple phantom flame flickered in front of Hikaru's eyes. Within the corners of the room, that purple flame seemed to burn. It was Dao Blade, but Hikaru realized what he was truly seeing. That was the Pokémon's soul. Almost immediately, the advanced psychic knowledge twisted Hikaru's field of vision. The once normal workshop appeared ancient and decayed, as if centuries old, full of eerie cold. The ceiling warped unnaturally, and Dao Blade vanished. Hikaru stood up and walked to the corner, looking around, then pushed the door open. A heavy gaze spanned the vast distance between heaven and earth, falling upon him. The workshop exterior looked nothing like reality. Silence and void reigned. Tornadoes raged in the vacuum, with countless floating islands of varying sizes twisted in space. Distorted, upended buildings stood on them, and enormous crystalline pillars pierced the sky. A Pokémon shaped like a giant dragon or a gargantuan centipede floated in the near distance, seemingly having noticed the workshop long ago. Its eyes were fixed directly on Hikaru, meeting his gaze. Damn it! Did I accidentally summon a wild Pokémon with my soul resonance? Who is it calling? Chapter 106. I can't believe I forgot this is Shinto. The land of Shinto is the true place of worship for Arceus. On this ancient land, there exists a triadic stage capable of creating all things in existence. That stage is precisely where 3 legendary Pokémon were born. So, without a doubt, the spirit that can be summoned with advanced spiritual knowledge is not some ancient local soul of Shinto, nor that wandering dusk noir, but rather the master of the distortion world Giratina. The distortion world. It mirrors the real world and is also called the world of destruction. It's the reverse side of the Pokémon world, where gravity is chaotic and the terrain and structures appear in mirrored forms. It has a corresponding relationship with the matter of the real world. That large, grey, floating Pokémon, shaped part dragon and part centipede, bears a gold half ring encircling its neck from its back. Black and red stripes run across the front of its neck in horizontal bands. 6 ghostly, ribbon-like wings float behind it, each wing tipped with red, and in total, 10 golden spikes jut from both sides of its body. Giratina origin form. Hikaru felt a faint heat on the back of his hand. Looking down, he noticed a strange black and red crest had appeared on it, the very crest belonging to Giratina on the triadic stage. Gra. You. In the ears of ordinary people, that sound would simply be a sharp, tremulous roar, Giratina's furious bellow. But to Hikaru, it was clearly a language humans could understand. Advanced spiritual knowledge can interpret more forms of mystical communication, even that of Pokémon referred to as gods. In Hikaru's eyes, Giratina's spiritual power was like a sun in the distortion world. Suddenly, a fierce golden lightning bolt streaked through the void. A violent duplicate, capable of calling down the thunder of rage. Hikaru muttered. In the next instant, Giratina's roar, carrying a raging storm, twisted its own form and vanished from this world. Back at the computer, Hikaru jolted awake. For just a moment, his eyes had lost focus, and his soul seemed to drift away from his body. Filled with surprise, he reflected on the advanced summoning knowledge he had just acquired. Mumbling a short incantation to call upon ghost-type Pokémon, he reduced the output of his spiritual power. In the next moment, Hikaru once again appeared in the distortion world. Meanwhile, in that very distortion world, Giratina was eyeing the spot from which Hikaru had just disappeared, annoyed. A human had suddenly and inexplicably intruded into its realm and stepped out from one of the houses here. Truth be told, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Some years ago, there was a researcher who somehow leapt into its world. Giratina chased him for a while, but since he didn't cause any real damage or disruption and was well hidden, Giratina eventually gave up the pursuit. But this human was different. He dared to appear right in front of Giratina, invading so brazenly, as if guided straight to its face. That was outright provocation. Unbearable. Fortunately, Giratina's single roar was enough to drive him away. That is the power of the Distortion World's master. Giratina felt a bit smug about that. Although it was banished to this world, it had long since gained the ability to enter and exit freely. Apart from Giratina itself, no other life form should be here unless it received Giratina's permission. Entering someone else's domain requires manners, no welcome. Hence, that sudden human intruder had been driven away with no mercy. This realm does not welcome unwanted guests. Smack! The door of the reverse workshop opened once again. Hikaru reappeared, looking baffled as he stood before Giratina. You were banishing me, right? And I was indeed banished. How dare you invade my domain, yet still return? Greya! This time, Giratina was truly enraged. Without a second thought, two golden, spiked armor plates on its jaw split open. Within its mouth, a massive, eerie blue will-o-wisp formed. A single will-o-wisp blasted toward Hikaru. The overwhelming type energy hammered his soul. Once more, Hikaru felt his spirit spinning, and he was forcibly driven out of this world yet again. Humph! Giratina watched coldly as that will-o-wisp burned Hikaru's soul into nothing, letting out a disdainful growl. Who does that feeble spiritual medium think he is? Trying to enter this world? At least he'll learn a lesson this time. If he dares come back, I'll make sure his defeat is even worse. That must have been painful. Inside the workshop, Hikaru's eyes refocused, and he felt dizzy. Giratina truly had a violent temper. But the key point was, why did my second attempt also summon Giratina? I weakened my spiritual power usage this time. No, this doesn't seem like I summoned it. It's more like it pulled me in. There's too big a gap in spiritual power and domain authority. Giratina, practically a god-like Pokémon, could yank my soul into its domain whenever I tried to connect. I'm just an ordinary human, so my soul is forcibly dragged into the distortion world. Should I try once more? That reckless thought flickered through Hikaru's mind. He once again chanted the incantation. His vision warped, and once again, Hikaru appeared in front of Giratina. Giratina. Encountering an unkillable wandering soul in the backyard of the distortion world that regenerates after being destroyed thrice, that's monstrous. No matter how much force is used, it can't truly be annihilated. Wait. Didn't you notice you're actually pulling me in? Before Giratina could attack again, Hikaru hastily tried to stop it. Gra! Fury still seethed within Giratina, but Hikaru's voice nonetheless reached its mind. Giratina realized there seemed to be a faint connection between the other's spirit and its own. How could that be possible? As one of the first Pokémon created by Arceus, Giratina is the master of the distortion world. It's inconceivable for a mortal spirit to be connected to it in any way. A mere spiritual medium forming a link with Giratina, unthinkable from any angle. Yet the subtle pull on Giratina's soul told it otherwise. The other party truly had some kind of connection with it. The red glow in Giratina's eyes sharpened as it fixed them on Hikaru. Its massive body twisted through the void, coming closer to the workshop. How did you do this? Break off that link at once. Giratina used some form of telepathy to communicate with Hikaru. At that moment, it spotted the crest on the back of Hikaru's hand. Giratina hesitated, then was utterly shocked, its two draconic eyes widening. Why do you have that crest? I don't know, Hikaru replied honestly. Giratina. The huge ghost dragon coiled in the emptiness, looming over the mirror image workshop. Finally, it demanded. Where did you come from? It held back on attacking this time, restraining its fury solely because that impossible crest had appeared before its eyes. Shinto, Hikaru answered. Giratina's pupils constricted slightly. After staring at Hikaru for a long moment, it let out a low rumble. The call of Shinto, you know where this place is? Before Hikaru could respond, Giratina itself answered, this is the world of destruction, the reverse supporting pillar of the real world, my place of exile. And the crest on your hand proves your identity. I am the ruler of the distortion world, the shadow under the brilliant light, the dragon of the world's other side Giratina. I never imagined that after 1,000 years, someone descended from Shinto's old bloodline would appear here. But you're not supposed to be in this world. From ancient Sinnoh, the people of Shinto migrated away, establishing the earliest temples to the gods. Even before that ancient legendary hero led 10 Pokémon to challenge Arceus, sculptures of the creation trio already stood in the ancient pathways of Shinto. That site was called the Temple of Shinto, which in the era of Hisui had become a ruin. Of its 3 giant statues, one was completely destroyed. In Giratina's eyes, its usual hostility was suddenly subdued. Back in the Hisui era, after Giratina caused trouble and was defeated by a certain someone, it decided to protect the world. Even a century of quiet didn't ease Giratina's temper toward the creatures living happily in the real world, but there were exceptions, namely, the people of Shinto. Long ago, they built a statue in Giratina's honor, placing it together with Dialga and Palkia in one place of worship. Even after they migrated to Shinto, they never forgot Giratina's image and still left a space for it on the stage of light. Even though the creator god, Arceus, didn't like Giratina and exiled it, that group of people never forgot it. That alone was enough to move Giratina. Aside from the Shinto people, only the Mishina people remembered it. Giratina preferred not to comment on them. Recalling how it had just attacked Hikaru, Giratina now felt a trace of regret. It had been careless. Next time, it should ask for someone's identity before attacking. Hikaru was equally surprised by Giratina's shift in attitude. The perpetually furious ghost dragon, Giratina, only the game's protagonist could usually quell its wrath. Now Hikaru had somehow done the same. Then again, in the lore, the protagonist is a descendant of Cow/Light, so perhaps Giratina recognizes something similar here. Your spirit seems to be thinking about something related to me, Giratina suddenly spoke up, seeing Hikaru's confused look. It offered a short explanation. Because of our faint spiritual connection, I can sense portions of your thoughts. Why did you come here? What do you want? Hikaru, what do I want? I don't know. You attacked me just now. Giratina immediately denied it. That was just a reflex, pretend it never happened. You humans should be aware that powerful creatures or deities like me are very protective of our domains. You invaded my territory, so I attacked you. In other words, it's your fault. But I'll overlook it this time because you're of Shinto's bloodline. Forget about it. Hikaru. Giratina, anyway, you're not hurt. Let's say nothing happened. After those words, Giratina glanced around and paused slightly. Although I'd like to speak more with a descendant of Shinto, there's really nothing here in the distortion world to serve as hospitality. Hikaru was speechless. Was Giratina planning to host him? Does that crest really carry that much weight? It practically tried to welcome me with will-o-wisp. Never mind. Since Giratina clearly wanted to gloss over its earlier aggression, Hikaru couldn't keep dwelling on it. I was studying spiritual knowledge, and I accidentally wandered in here. I never expected to connect with you. After all, you're a legendary Pokémon. Hikaru looked around. So is my body here, or just my spirit? Your spirit, Giratina answered, its crimson eyes glinting in the gloom. If you remain away from your body for too long, your soul will have nowhere to return. Even a medium like you isn't exempt. It paused, then lowered its huge form closer to the workshop. By the way, descendant of Shinto, since you have arrived here, I have a request. Giratina, making a request? This fierce fellow actually wants help? Refusing a legendary Pokémon's request is usually unwise. It's a rare chance to be on good terms with it, and maybe I can gather some materials from this world in the future. Go ahead. I'm a craftsman, so if you need something made, I can help. You're a craftsman? That's perfect. Giratina was visibly pleased. A spark of excitement flickered in its red eyes, an emotion it hadn't felt in ages. Do you know about the Temple of Shinto? Hikaru nodded. Yes, though I believe that ruin no longer exists. There's hardly any news about the Temple of Shinto in modern-day Sinnoh. It might have been excavated and protected, or maybe collapsed entirely over the past century. Indeed, the ruins have completely vanished. The people of Sinnoh have forgotten it. So I want you to carve a new statue. That was Giratina's request. It was still upset about its old statue being destroyed and removed from the shrine of the creation trio. Later, Only a person named Valo ever showed sympathy toward it, which is why Giratina once worked with him. Hey? As Giratina spoke, it suddenly felt something off. It stared at Hikaru, feeling he looked vaguely familiar, like they had met in the distant past, though it couldn't recall when. Giratina had heard of phenomena like this. If reality had been altered at some point in time, one might experience familiarity without actual memory. Could it be? Hikaru, unaware of Giratina's sudden thoughts, said, "Oh, a statue? No problem. That's exactly my specialty. Do you have any specific requirements for the material?" "Stone of gratitude," Giratina replied. "If you can't find that stone, then any ordinary rock will do. In return, I will give you this." Giratina opened its jaws, spitting out a golden, irregular orb. From a bit of a distance, it looked to Hikaru like the Griseus orb. "You are currently here in spirit form, so you can't take it now. Once you finish the statue and place a mirror beside it, I will hand this orb over. Remember to look in the mirror often." Through mirrors or reflective surfaces, Giratina can observe the real world. A mirror is a gateway connecting these two worlds. Hikaru suddenly wondered if this was related to space distortion as well? And that Griseus orb, well, it's certainly valuable. It's Giratina's exclusive item, but I'm not sure what I can craft from it. Watching Giratina swallow the orb back down, Hikaru nodded, then began inspecting the soil and water around him. Rare material, distortion soil. Description: soil found in the distortion world, distinct from normal soil. It can be used as material for distortion crafts. Rare material, inversion water. Description: water found in the distortion world, distinct from normal water. It can be used as material for distortion crafts. You have obtained the craft, Distortion Craft, B+. Description: allows creation of objects that defy the normal logic of the real-world items of the distortion world. By acquiring the Griseus orb, you can unlock ruined craft to produce distortion blocks. Distortion blocks? Crackle. All of a sudden, Hikaru noticed a cluster of black clouds nearby. In this world, it's my job to correct distortions. Whenever there's distortion in the real world, these black clouds appear, Giratina explained. They're highly toxic to creatures with physical bodies, but as a spirit, you need not fear them. Hikaru recalled that in the movie Giratina and the Sky Warrior, a researcher explained these black clouds, produced by distortions between the real and distortion worlds. While toxic, contact alone wasn't fatal as long as you didn't inhale them. Testing that theory, Hikaru touched the dark clouds in spirit form. The surrounding space rippled like a shock wave, mirroring the crackling lightning that heralded the cloud's appearance. The clouds disappeared in an instant. Precious material, black cloud. Description: created when the real world becomes distorted and manifests in the distortion world. Considered a pollutant here. Can be used for distortion crafts and is excellent for training ghost, poison, and dark-type Pokémon. You have obtained the knowledge, collector of spacetime. You can store spacetime-related materials in a special dimensional space. Hikaru was startled. What kind of knowledge is this? A personal storage dimension? Giratina had been watching the black cloud vanish and now stared in surprise. Hey, where did that pollution go? Aren't you supposed to be a sculptor? Are you also a cleaning service? Hikaru started to reply, but his soul suddenly quivered as though someone were calling him. His form grew dim in the distortion world, then dissolved at the workshop entrance. Back in the real world. Wah! Hikaru gasped, regaining consciousness. Something slapped against his body, and upon focusing, he saw that the leaves belonged to Lily Gant. Lily. At some point, he'd been dragged away from his workshop desk, and now all his Pokémon were trying to save him. Apparently, Lily Gant had been pressing on his chest for CPR. So Lily Gant had used close combat. And it was super effective. Chapter 107. Hikaru looked around at the Pokémon gathered around him. Dowblade floated in front, its two ribbons covered in cleanse tags. What are you doing? Hikaru asked weakly. He realized his mouth felt stuffed with something. Spitting it out, he discovered a pile of revival herbs and poke blocks. Turning his head, he saw Lily Gant eyeing him with concern. Dowblade scratched its hilt with its ribbon. You suddenly fainted at your computer. Your body was giving off an eerie chill, as if your soul had vanished. So I grabbed a bunch of talismans from the fourth room to drive out evil spirits. Dowblade gestured flamboyantly, as though performing a ghost banishing ritual. As for using close combat to, do CPR. I once saw an ancient doctor do it, and it seemed to work. Looks effective now. Thanks for the CPR. Very effective indeed, you even revived the dead. My ribs feel like they might be broken, but a quick check shows I'm okay. Gotta love that robust body. My body's basically on par with a fighting type master. I'm a super Shinto human. Hikaru felt exasperated, but Lilligant had clearly held back. Still, close combat is no joke. Good thing my constitution has been reinforced by all these experiences, otherwise, I'd be meeting in a ghost Giratina again already. That was unexpected. My spiritual power is too weak, and I accidentally summoned a powerful ghost-type Pokémon. I got pulled into its realm. You. Doublade's eyes lit with curiosity. A powerful ghost-type Pokémon. Could it be that giant black spectre wandering the forest? No, it was Giratina. Hikaru pointed in the direction of the Shinto ruins. Remember when we first visited those ruins? We saw that stage with 3 crests. One of them represents Giratina. You. Doublade's eyes went wide. That stage at the Shinto ruins? Weren't those 3 crests said to worship the gods that created this world? In other words, those 3 crests correspond to 3 Pokémon created by the god of creation, and you actually met one of them. You. Doubblade suddenly grew excited, while Lilligant looked puzzled. Doubblade began explaining. Indeed, the king I've chosen is the same person favored by the gods. We heard from that traveling merchant that if we show our strength before the gods, we might be acknowledged. Now it has actually happened. The divine right of kings that ancient nations all claimed, except they were fake. Ours is real. Giratina really is one of the first Pokémon created by the god Arceus. It governs the distortion world, also called the world of destruction, supporting the real world behind the scenes, Hikaru explained. By the way, I should have brought something back. He concentrated, and a small portion of black clouds materialized in the palm of his hand. Lilligant curiously moved closer, but Hikaru jumped, exclaiming, "Don't inhale it." Lily. Lilligant motioned to herself. Right, she doesn't actually have a nose. Hikaru remembered that in the movie, Shaman could absorb those black clouds and purify them for energy. Shaman is also a grass type. Then again, in our household, there's little need to worry about poison. Turtwig, wait, hey. He realized only Doubblade and Lilligant were here. Lily. Lilligant pointed toward the Shinto forest, indicating that Turtwig, Unown, and Regirock had gone into the woods to train their moves. So, they're not home. Hikaru was impressed that Turtwig and the others are now motivated enough to train on their own. These black clouds come from space-time distortion. They're great for ghost, poison, and dark-type Pokémon. Doubblade, give it a try. Doubblade, intrigued, extended its ribbon into the cloud. At once, it felt a surge of intense negative energy. While not purely ghost energy, negative energy is similar enough. Doubblade felt its power increasing, swiftly absorbing the black cloud entirely. The accumulated power churned inside Doubblade. Hikaru then recalled his advanced summoning knowledge and channeled spiritual power into Doubblade. You used spiritual power to nurture Doubblade. Doublade's ghost energy rose, powering up its ghost-type moves. Doubblade activated the black cloud's energy. It has grown. Space-time distortion caused a slight attribute shift. Through your spiritual infusion, that shift is temporarily triggered. You obtained the knowledge, ghost resistance. Is the old type resistance back? Hikaru was astonished at Doublade's transformation. Not only did its ghost power rise, but as an ancient sword, its steel itself underwent some kind of reversion, like the days when steel still resisted ghost moves in earlier generations. It may not be exactly the same, but close enough for Doubblade. Deep in the Shinto forest, near a valley filled with ancient tombstones, a massive black figure wandered, Dusk Noir, the Gripper Pokémon. It suddenly heard a signal from the spirit realm telling it that someone nearby had died and instructing it to retrieve the soul. Moments later, however, the spirit realm's signal changed. Never mind, the person came back to life. Dusk Noir. As a ghost-type Pokémon and an agent of the spirit realm, it was well aware that the dead cannot return unless they become a ghost-type Pokémon. So what is this came back to life nonsense? Utterly confused, Dusk Noir drifted among the tombstones until it paused at a white headstone. Strange inscriptions in an ancient language were carved there, and a dormant soul lay beneath. What do these letters say? What does that soul need before it awakens and comes with me back to the spirit realm? And what are these white stones that let souls linger inside them? Who left these words, and for whom? Meanwhile, in the sky above Shinto, a deep blue, disc-shaped steel-type Pokémon soared like a UFO, scanning the ground. It was a Metagross with 4 huge steel claws. On its back rode a young man with short, pale blue hair, dressed in a crisp suit. He was following the directions Hikaru had sent. Finally, peering down, he spotted a small village and, in the distance, a solitary workshop with figures moving below. That must be it, according to the route from Blackthorn City. Metagross, let's land. Chapter 108. What's that? Hikaru, still studying the black clouds, suddenly noticed a huge shape rushing toward his workshop through the sky. Under the sunlight, it sped closer and was soon discernible. It was Metagross. Metagross is entirely blue-gray and disc-shaped, with 4 sturdy legs branching from its body. 2 red eyes peer out, and a metallic X spans its face. Which means the refined young nobleman riding it must be the champion from the Hone region, heir to the Devon Corporation, an avid stone collector Stephen. Stephen is here! Hikaru exclaimed. Lilligant glanced up curiously. Dowblade suddenly realized something. Wait, that wealthy customer is here? Does that mean? Metagross gradually slowed, then landed smoothly on the ground. Stephen dismounted, his expression brimming with curiosity and excitement. This place is really remote. I never expected anyone to be living here. Although Hikaru had sent him the coordinates, Shinto lay in the far north of Johto. Stephen had asked around, but no one had heard of such a place. It took some effort to confirm the correct path. As for Metagross, it was currently a standard blue one, not the signature silver shiny Metagross that Stephen would acquire later. Presumably, the shiny one hadn't yet been captured at this point. Still, this Metagross had been with Stephen for quite a while. Once Metagross landed, Stephen took a look around. This was unfamiliar territory, somewhat chilly climate, a lone workshop, and, Stephen straightened his coat. Hikaru, for his part, felt a subtle surge of excitement. After all, Pokémon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald were Hikaru's first dive into the series, and Stephen was the very first champion he faced. From personality to style and the strength of his Pokémon, Stephen was truly iconic. There's also that amusing bit about his team containing multiple rock-type Pokémon, leading fans to joke that he's actually a rock champion rather than steel. Then there's Lance, champion of both Kanto and Johto, who ended up being called a flying-type master, since early generations had few dragons. Lance responded in later games with a famous line, "It's not only dragon-type Pokémon that can be considered dragon-like," valiantly defending his roster. Pleased to meet you, Hikaru. I'm Stephen, a gem collector from the Hone region. Stephen and Hikaru exchanged a friendly handshake. The next moment, Stephen's gaze locked onto Dowblade. Dowblade's ribbons were covered in all sorts of purple talismans, radiating a powerful ghost aura. Yet Stephen instantly recognized its steel attribute. This Dowblade. It's been raised extremely well. Stephen, an expert in steel types, could see at a glance how far Dowblade had come, even though its blade was concealed within a sheath. Just as Stephen was about to examine Dowblade more closely, he suddenly noticed a pale purple stone inlaid on Dowblade's shield-like guard. It was as though an exclamation mark popped above Stephen's head. He stared at Hikaru in disbelief. Dowblade's inner monologue, perfect. That was deliberate so you'd notice the stone and be intrigued. That's an Eviolite. I recently discovered a second one, Hikaru said, seizing the moment. Of course, I've already polished it, and its effect is identical to the first one. He had always planned to sell this piece to Stephen. And Stephen, well, he'd surely name a good price. I'm so grateful. Stephen's expression lit up with excitement, the smile on his face reflecting genuine joy. I didn't expect you would find another so soon. To be honest, after I learned of this remarkable stone, I went to Azalea Town's gym to ask around, Stephen explained. I'm quite the enthusiast for rare stones, so I often travel in search of them. I also asked a friend to do some excavations in the Sinnoh underground. I thought if neither of us could find another, I might have to go to Sinnoh myself. Why go to Sinnoh? Hikaru interjected, surprised. Stephen replied with equal puzzlement, well, I heard that you used to work in Sinnoh, so I assumed that first stone was found there. Ah, that explains it. Hikaru gave a wry smile and clarified, I did live in Sinnoh for a time, but I didn't get the Eviolite there. I discovered it in a ruin before coming to Shinto. Actually, Dao Blade here was an ancient sword found with that stone. Hikaru gestured to the Pokémon, which waved its ribbons in greeting to Steven. You. Then Dao Blade turned to converse with Metagross. Both being steel types, they had plenty in common. Dao Blade circled the Metagross, wondering if it could snag some extra steel from those limbs. Metagross found Dao Blade's circling suspicious. What is this Pokémon plotting? Steven chuckled. Haha, it seems they're getting along quite well. Hikaru wiped a bit of sweat. Not exactly. Ahem. Hoping to redirect Steven's focus, Hikaru said, anyway, as for the Eviolite, this kind of stone appears in many places, not just Sinnoh or that ruin. Hone definitely has them too. There's no need to rely solely on traveling to Sinnoh. Eviolite often forms where many Pokémon live for long periods, whether forest, lake, mountain, or cave. It might even appear in fishing spots. Possibly, some fishermen or mountain climbers have picked one up without recognizing it, merely keeping it as a precious gem or selling it as a random trinket. In certain ancient kingdoms, this stone was set into equipment as a natural gemstone. So searching old ruins might yield a find as well. I've heard that near the famous Berry Master's home in Hone, the soil is rich, featuring both mountains and lakes. Many Magikarp also gather there. Who's to say Eviolite won't appear there? And there's always the Lake of Rage in Johto. My guess is Eviolite is tied to Pokémon evolution. Where large numbers of Pokémon evolve, residual evolution energy seeps into the environment, fusing with certain minerals and forming Eviolite. That's just my theory, though. Steven mulled it over. Indeed, Hone's geological diversity can rival anywhere. As for mining knowledge, you seem to know as much as I do. You truly are a person after my own heart. Steven smiled. Actually, I want to talk about the price of this second Eviolite, and, here's what you asked for. He took out a stone from his pouch. It was pitch black like the darkness of a moonless night. This was the Dusk Stone. Chapter 109. The Dusk Stone, as dark as the night itself, is a mystical stone capable of evolving certain Pokémon. Hikaru took the Dusk Stone. Rare material, Dusk Stone. Effect, a mystical stone that allows certain Pokémon to evolve. It is as dark as the night itself. Acquired craft, 1. Soul Forging Craft, C+ the ability to incorporate ghost energy into forging, creating items with supernatural properties. The Dusk Stone is one of the primary materials used for this craft. By using this craft and collecting the corresponding Pokémon materials, one can create the Cursed Armor or Cursed Shovel. Cursed Armor and Tools. The Cursed Armor is an evolution item for Charcadet, allowing it to evolve into Cerulge. The Cursed Shovel, on the other hand, is an item from the Pokémon trading card game. It is a red, ominous-looking iron shovel imbued with eerie supernatural energy, resembling the small shovel carried by Palos Sand. In the TCG, when a Pokémon with this item attached is knocked out by an opponent's attack, the top 2 cards of the opponent's deck are discarded. Its effect seems similar to moves like Destiny Bond or Grudge, Hikaru mused. Destiny Bond causes both the user and the opponent to faint if the user is knocked out by an attack. However, using it repeatedly will result in failure. Grudge curses the opponent when the user faints due to their attack, reducing the move's PP to 0. However, this particular Dusk Stone couldn't be used as forging material just yet. Yo-oo! Doublade's eyes gleamed with excitement upon seeing the Dusk Stone. This was it, the stone that would allow it to evolve into its final form. Oh? So, this stone is for your Pokémon, then? Steven turned his gaze to Doublade. I've seen this Pokémon before in the Kalos region. If I recall correctly, it's called Doublade, a ghost and steel-type Pokémon. This one has been raised exceptionally well. Far superior to any Doublade I've encountered before. Steven did not hold back his praise. Now that he had laid eyes on a second evolution stone, his mood had visibly brightened. He finally took the time to carefully examine Doublade. Doublade, in turn, unsheathed its blades, proudly allowing Steven to inspect it. The more he examined the gleam on Doublade's blade, the more astonished he became. For steel-type Pokémon, their condition could be judged at a glance by their luster. A well-raised steel type should be smooth, free of rust, undamaged, and without noticeable warping or deformations. The blade was polished to a mirror-like shine. The scabbard was sturdy and elegant. Its twin eyes gleamed like gemstones. Even though it was part ghost type, its ribbon-like appendages lacked the usual tattered appearance of ghost Pokémon. Instead, they were pristine, ornate, and elegant. Stephen nodded in admiration. As expected of a mysterious craftsman living in Shinto, even his Pokémon raising skills were extraordinary. Before arriving in Shinto, Stephen had been curious about Hikaru. After all, Hikaru's presence was enigmatic. His existence seemed almost out of place. Living in a hidden location further fueled speculation that he was a descendant of an ancient lineage. If this were a game, Hikaru would probably be the hidden blacksmith who upgrades equipment, a secret NPC that could only be unlocked by completing special quests before crafting unique items. Since Devon Corporation had some involvement in the gaming industry, Stephen had played his fair share of RPGs. He couldn't help but make such an association. To raise a Steel-type Pokémon to this level, Hikaru's breeding techniques were definitely superior to his own. Although Stephen specialized in Steel types, he wasn't an expert in Pokémon breeding. His close friends Wallace and Adam, the gym leader of Pseudo-Poly's city, often helped him train his Pokémon, as their breeding expertise was remarkable. Unlike most trainers who focused solely on battles, professional Pokémon breeders and professors had their own systematic methods for raising Pokémon. They prioritized body maintenance, dietary balance, and training tools while also ensuring Pokémon were raised in suitable environments to optimize their growth. In many places, breeders maintained large farms with multiple Pokémon species or even ran Pokémon ranches. Top-tier breeders could even customize enhancement programs for Pokémon based on their type and species. Their knowledge far exceeded that of the average trainer. In fact, some of the world's greatest breeders were also Pokémon professors, such as Professor Oak from Kanto and Professor Elm from Johto. As for Professor Birch from Hone, his research focused on Pokémon habitats, distribution, and ecology rather than breeding. Compared to Oak and Elm, Birch wasn't as specialized in raising Pokémon. However, in terms of Pokémon natural habitats and ecological studies, he was one of the most respected experts in academia. Stephen then shifted the conversation. I recently saw some Pokémon breeding items in a store, and I was planning to purchase a few special products, especially ones related to Steel types. At this point, Stephen's expression subtly changed, his smile carrying a trace of bitterness. 2 years ago, Hone experienced a major crisis. You may have heard of it. The Magma Team and Aqua Team, driven by their own ambitions, tried to expand the land and sea, respectively. This ultimately led to the awakening of the ancient Pokémon. Fortunately, the situation was resolved thanks to 2 exceptionally strong trainers. That incident made me realize my shortcomings. As a trainer, I had been too complacent. I neglected certain aspects of Pokémon battle training. So, after that event, I began purchasing high-quality minerals to feed my Pokémon. But simply consuming these minerals isn't enough to convert them into real strength. If it were, then Pokémon breeders wouldn't even need to exist. Food is just one part of the breeding process. After seeing your Doublade's condition, I'm convinced that your breeding skills rival those of Wallace. Contest trainers often possessed breeding knowledge, as making a Pokémon strong, beautiful, and intelligent required understanding their habits, diet, training, and even psychological well-being. Hikaru was caught off guard. His breeding skills were on par with Wallace's. That's quite the compliment. I'll take it as recognition of my craftsmanship. You need Steel-type breeding tools? Perfect timing. Come inside with me. My workshop just received a fresh batch of materials, and I was preparing to craft some items. Also, I've got the ancient rock you requested ready for you. The secret workshop of Shinto. Stephen gazed at the ancient building with curiosity. What kind of mysterious items awaited him inside? Chapter 110. Bonus Chapter. Upon entering the workshop, Stephen was immediately drawn to the array of tools and crafts on display. The craftsmanship was exquisite, but what truly caught his attention was a peculiar-looking stone resting on a workbench. Hikaru picked up the stone and handed it to Stephen. This is an ancient rock. To an untrained eye, it might seem like an ordinary stone, albeit with slightly unusual coloration and texture. However, to a rock expert of Stephen's caliber, the stone appeared almost alive, radiating a powerful and strange energy. It's a crystallization of rock-type energy. Stephen immediately identified it. Hikaru nodded. That's right. Ancient rock is a crystallized form of rock-type energy that forms under specific conditions. Structurally, it is quite similar to the rock gem found in Unova. Furthermore, the Pokémon capable of producing ancient rock aren't limited to Regirock Nova's Jigglypuff, Galar's Stonjourner, and Kalo's Binnacle can also act as catalysts for its formation under the right circumstances. As Stephen became engrossed in examining the stone, his peripheral vision caught sight of some symbolic tablets placed at the edge of the workbench. Curious, he picked one up and studied it. Since the Hone region lacked unknown, Stephen couldn't decipher the markings. However, he had a keen interest in ancient ruins after all, many valuable stones were often discovered within them. Though he couldn't read the text, he recalled having seen something similar in a research paper. These tablets resemble the ones found in the ruins of Ulf in Johto. Ah, yes, they're modeled after those, Hikaru answered candidly, making no effort to hide the truth from Stephen, as the symbolic tablets only reacted to their creator. These tablets are inspired by ancient Pokémon, unknown, which are found in Kanto, Johto, and Sinnoh. Professor Hale from Johto has researched whether written language or unknown came first, but so far, there are no conclusive results. Professor Hale, from Pokémon, Spell of the Unknown, Entei, was a Pokémon researcher whose daughter was central to the movie's plot. The events were heavily tied to Unknown's ability to materialize thoughts into reality. The movie also contained an intriguing historical record. Ancient ruins depicted one of Ho-Oh's 3 legendary guardians, Entei. This raised a major question: was the Pokémon recorded in those ancient ruins truly Entei? Or was it actually Eternatus? I crafted these tablets using a special technique. Did you feel a boost in your mental energy while staring at them? Hikaru asked. Stephen snapped out of his daze, startled. He had unknowingly been staring at the tablets, completely entranced. Clink! One of the Pokeballs at Stephen's waist shook as if reacting to the tablets. It was Metang's Pokeball. Since Metagross had been left outside, Metang was the only Psychic-type Pokémon Stephen had on him at the moment. Your Pokémon reacted to the tablets. However, these aren't designed to enhance Psychic Pokémon's mental power. If you're looking for such an item, I can craft something for you, perhaps a light pottery or a Psychic glass whistle. And also, a Calyrex doll. Calyrex. This was the first time Stephen had heard that name. Is it a Pokémon? Hikaru nodded. Yes, a lost legend also known as the King of Bountiful Harvests. It possesses the power to heal minds and make plants flourish, as well as formidable psychic abilities. My Calyrex doll enhances the holder's mental strength and helps heal emotional wounds. As Hikaru explained, he noticed a peculiar look in Stephen's eyes. Someone like Stephen, an elegant and composed gentleman, probably didn't have much need for emotional healing. Interesting. I'll take one, Stephen said with a subtle gleam in his eyes. While he wasn't emotionally troubled, anything from the Traveler's Workshop was bound to be exceptional. Traveler's Workshop made, quality guaranteed. No questions, just buy. Hikaru chuckled. Then I'll add you to the buyer's group chat. Most of the people in it are psychic users. By the way, I should thank you. Phoebe from the Hone Elite Four was introduced to me by you, wasn't she? Oh, that was nothing. Stephen smiled warmly. When you find something good, of course, you have to share it with your friends. It's only natural as a customer. The Elite Four and the 2 Hone champions were all close friends who often shared interesting finds. Judging by the messages Phoebe had sent later, the charms she bought from the workshop were exceptionally effective. Apparently, ever since she used your charms, MT Pyre has been flooded with restless spirits, Stephen said with a slight chuckle. It sounds a bit eerie, but Phoebe says it's actually a good thing. Those souls, guided by your charms, can now find peace. The world of spirit channelers is truly fascinating. Oh, that's right, you're also a spirit channeler, aren't you? Hikaru recalled Phoebe mentioning this in the group chat. If his charms could directly guide spirits to the afterlife, then if there were clerks managing the afterlife, his KPI must be skyrocketing. He pondered for a moment before shifting the topic. Now, let's talk about Pokémon moves. Steel-type Pokémon are known for their exceptional defenses, so I have a particularly useful trademark suited for them. And it's an exclusive product, something obtained from a legendary giant. It's called Body Press. It works best with Skarmory. Stephen's Skarmory was one of the rare, well-trained NPC Pokémon, known for using Toxic and Spikes in battles. Unfortunately, it lacked Whirlwind, which made it less effective against Elite Four Glacia's stall tactics. The principle behind this move is that it calculates damage using defense instead of attack. The higher the defense, the greater the damage dealt. Since Skarmory excels in defense as a Steel-type Pokémon, it's a perfect match for this move. Steven was taken aback. A move from a legendary giant? That didn't sound quite right. Even Mr. Brandon had a Regirock, but Steven had never heard of it using a move like Body Press before. If such a move really exists, one that replaces attack with defense for damage calculation, then every Pokémon with high defense would. Exactly. This move is a game changer for defensive Pokémon. Hikaru smiled as he pulled out an ancient bracelet inscribed with the technique for Body Press. Before DMS existed, Pokémon used these bracelets to learn moves through repeated practice. And yes, it can be reused, it won't break after a single use. 5 million Poke Dollars. Steven immediately made an offer. There's no doubt about it, this move is as valuable as an Eviolite in battles. Its existence could completely revolutionize the way defensive Pokémon are used. More importantly, Steven had never heard of this move before, meaning it was an exclusive item just like Eviolite. And he was the first buyer. At this point, money was no longer the concern, what mattered was forming a valuable friendship. An unusual, almost excessive, emotion flickered in Steven's eyes, making Hikaru pause in silence. Being rich is really nice. While 5 million Poke Dollars might not mean much to Steven, for Hikaru, it was a huge sum. Thank you for your purchase, Mr. Steven. Not at all, I should be thanking you for crafting this. The two shook hands firmly, their palms clasping together in a mutual exchange of wealth and sincerity. Steven had paid an incredibly generous amount, this friendship was set in stone. Here, take this as well. Hikaru handed Steven a silver glass whistle. This is a steel glass whistle, and its effects are. Steven was stunned. Hone was famous for its glass whistles, handcrafted from MT Chimney's volcanic ash. To think he would find a similar product all the way in Sinnoh, but with completely different properties. This steel glass whistle enhanced the power of steel-type moves, activated steel sense, prevented critical hits, and boosted a Pokémon's growth. It sounded like some specialized training tool, something straight out of a fantasy. Yet, it was real, right in front of him. Wait a moment. Hikaru walked into the kitchen and quickly prepared something before returning with a special bait for steel-type Pokémon. Crafted food, mineral bait. Effect, a unique blend of special minerals, soft sand, iron shell materials, berries, refined iron powder, and bait base. Strongly attracts steel, grass, and rock-type Pokémon. Additional effect 1, Steel Surge food greatly enhances Steel-type energy for a set duration, aiding in Steel-type Pokémon growth. Additional effect 2, Steel's might when consumed, Steel-type Pokémon enter an energy surge state, increasing durability, strengthening resistance to unfavorable attributes, and significantly improving the chance of learning new moves. What is this? Steven was momentarily dazed by the mineral bait. Hikaru smirked. A newly developed Steel Surge food. If given to Steel-type Pokémon, it can lead to unexpected growth. It's perfect for breeders. Why not let Metagross try it? Chapter 111. Lilligant, Dowblade, and Metagross were outside the workshop, getting acquainted with each other while discussing their respective trainers. Dowblade still had a bunch of cleanse tags hanging on its body and occasionally used its ribbon-like arms to touch Metagross's claws, causing the latter to shudder. Meadow. What exactly are you trying to do? Yo, I just want to take a closer look at your metal plating you've developed so well. Dowblade's somewhat unsettling words immediately annoyed Metagross. Looking over at Lilligant, she was staring intently at Dowblade, seemingly lost in thought after hearing its peculiar remarks. Her face even turned slightly red. Meadow. Stop imagining weird things. Metagross spoke out righteously, clarifying that it had no such thoughts. Besides, it was genderless. Dowblade's eyes widened. Wait, you're genderless? Then why do I have a gender? Metagross, Meadow. That's something you don't need to understand about Pokémon. Dowblade, though puzzled, quickly dismissed the matter. After all, it didn't have a brain to think too deeply about such things. Yo, I really think you've developed well. Can you tell me how you train? Metagross suddenly relaxed. So it wasn't a weirdo after all, just a normal Steel-type Pokémon looking to exchange training tips. As for how it trained, its trainer was rich. Meadow. Metagross said cheerfully. Since its trainer had abundant financial resources, it regularly received all kinds of high-quality minerals to eat. Sometimes, there were even premium-grade steel gems imported from Unova. For Steel-type Pokémon, growth primarily depended on consuming various minerals. However, as Metagross glanced at Doublade's form. This guy doesn't have a mouth. That means it can't just chow down on minerals like I do. Absorbing them must be way more troublesome. Doublade's mood suddenly sank. Hey, the real issue here isn't about minerals, it's about whether our trainers are rich or not. Our trainer isn't exactly wealthy. Buying high-quality minerals from stores was far too expensive, so they had to scavenge for them in the wild instead. Doublade then turned to look at Lilligant and let out a sigh of envy. Grass-type Pokémon sure have it easy. If they need high-quality berries, they can just grow them themselves. At most, they only need special soil, whereas Steel-type Pokémon have an enormous demand for minerals. Creak. Steven pushed open the workshop door, drawing the attention of all three Pokémon. Metagross, try this food and see how it is. Steven carried a plate of Iron-Mite food and placed it in front of Metagross. Just as Metagross was still processing what was happening, Doublade had already widened its eyes and let out a strange yo sound. Hey! Isn't that Iron-Mite food? And the first one to try it isn't me. Metagross glanced at the somewhat distressed Doublade and realized that this was probably something valuable. Steel-type Pokémon didn't have noses, nor did they need to rely on smell. Even if it ate something not suited for steel types, it wouldn't matter. Steel-type Pokémon didn't get poisoned, so they weren't afraid of eating the wrong thing. Metagross opened its huge mouth and swallowed the Iron-Mite food whole. Chewing. Its massive steel jaws moved slightly, but no one knew what exactly was happening inside its body. A sound akin to a blender whirred from its mouth. Then suddenly, after fully consuming the food, Metagross felt a surge of intense energy rapidly flooding out from its core. The energy was rising. And not just a little, it was a massive increase. Steel-type energy manifested in various forms, and magnetism was one of them. At that moment, Metagross could feel the magnetism of the Sinnoh region's earth surging toward it. It was utterly shocked. Not only was its energy increasing, but it could also perceive the Earth's magnetic field much more clearly. For Metagross and its evolutionary line, blood didn't flow through their bodies, magnetism did. The stronger the surrounding magnetic field, the stronger a Metagross could become. Steven, however, was focused on something else. Its sheen has changed. This was an evident transformation, one that could be seen with the naked eye. Steven found it incredible that just eating a single type of food had triggered such a dramatic internal and external change in Metagross. The fluctuations of the Earth's magnetic field were so strong that even he, a human, could faintly sense them. Was this the power of Metagross? Steven, what did you experience? How do you feel? Metagross let out a puzzled sound. It had no idea what had just happened, only that an intense wave of magnetism had surged into its body. How did it feel? Absolutely fantastic. So Metagross turned to Doublade and asked what exactly it had just eaten. Doublade finally had a chance to flaunt itself in front of Metagross. Ha! Your trainer may be able to buy you high-quality minerals, but he doesn't know how to properly prepare and refine Pokémon food for better growth. So, aside from being rich, was there really nothing else to it? Of course, that wasn't something Doublade could say outright. As a righteous little knight, Doublade understood very well what Hikaru meant to Steven. He wasn't just a generous sponsor. In the past, he would have been a powerful feudal lord or a special figure, someone who must be recruited to accomplish great things. So, Doublade explained to Metagross that this was its trainer's unique skill, a mysterious and unparalleled craft that could create items and tools capable of granting Pokémon immense growth. The food Metagross had eaten today was an extremely rare delicacy that couldn't be bought anywhere on the market. It was incredibly difficult to produce, and so. You owe us a favor. Metagross was stunned. The power of this food was indeed immense. It could clearly feel the surge in its growth. To be honest, its progress had stagnated for a long time. Since its trainer was the champion, nurturing Metagross further at this level had become incredibly difficult. But now, for the first time in ages, Metagross felt the possibility of breaking past its limits. Did this mean? Metagross suddenly looked at Doublade with excitement, its voice ringing with determination. This favor I, Metagross, will remember it. Doublade and Lilligant exchanged glances, unsure why Metagross had such a drastic change in attitude. Metagross let out a sigh and began explaining its inner struggles. It turned out that its growth potential had reached its limit. No matter how much it trained, it could no longer become stronger. For a trainer, this was a normal occurrence. High-level trainers would often raise new, stronger Pokémon to add to their team. This was natural. And in Steven's team, there was indeed a Pokémon that had surpassed it. In terms of seniority, Metagross had been with Steven the longest. Since it was a little Beldum, it had been by his side. But later on, Steven caught a silver-colored Beldum. Over the years, that Beldum evolved into Metagross as well. And in terms of strength, it had become stronger than the first Metagross. As the champion, Steven had to deal with all sorts of crises, so choosing the stronger partner for everyday battles was the logical choice. Metagross had no resentment about this, it only blamed its own strength for reaching its limit. It had silently accepted its fate as a secondary replacement, no longer Steven's ace. But now, this strange food had given it a chance to reclaim its place. At the very least, it could be his second ace. So, it had to express its gratitude. Doublade's eyes suddenly lit up. It patted Metagross several times, its eyes burning with the fire of justice. So you're also a Pokémon with great ambitions. At first, I thought you were just aloof, but I misjudged you. As a righteous little knight, Doublade had sworn to help all Pokémon achieve their dreams. Your dream, I acknowledge it. Why do they suddenly seem to be getting along so well? Steven stared blankly at the three Pokémon, now happily bonding. Could Iron Might food really boost friendship this quickly? Without hesitation, he turned and walked back into the workshop, where Hikaru was already bringing out more tools for nurturing Pokémon. Lord Hikaru, just as you predicted, Metagross has undergone an unbelievable transformation. Right? And I have even more supplementary products. Hikaru laid out an impressive array of items: powerful Pokeblocks, Sinnoh secret potions, and even rare candies. The ultimate collection of Pokémon growth supplements had arrived. Chapter 112. Steven had lost count of how many times he had been surprised. This small workshop seemed to hide an endless supply of miraculous tools. Every time he discovered one, more would come flooding toward him like an unstoppable tide. This Pokeblock, was this handmade? Steven couldn't believe his eyes. The quality and precision of the Pokeblock before him were so refined that they looked like they had been produced by a high-end machine, one of those expensive, advanced models. Yet, when Hikaru, looking somewhat embarrassed, admitted, "Of course, it's handmade," Steven was at a loss for words. So, because he couldn't afford a machine, he had perfected his handcrafting skills to this level? Even Gym Leader Juan of Pseudopolis rarely handcrafts Pokeblocks of this quality. These are powerful Pokeblocks, there's no mistaking it. Steven was genuinely amazed at Hikaru's abilities. Others relied on machines to make Pokeblocks, but you're making them by hand. This wasn't something an ordinary breeder could pull off. Out of curiosity, Steven tasted one. Without a doubt. The texture and flavor were both top-notch. Even in terms of sheer deliciousness, it was on par with those made by renowned breeders. Different colors of Pokeblocks had different dominant flavors, and while Pokémon would reject flavors they disliked, humans could appreciate all flavors and discern their subtle qualities. This was what was referred to as deliciousness. Of course, Maze Pokeblocks were an exception. Meanwhile, what Hikaru heard was, as expected, the gym leader of Pseudopolis can handcraft powerful Pokeblocks as well. No wonder he's a top-tier coordinator. I still have a lot to learn. There must be even higher quality Pokeblocks out there. When I visit Hone for certification, I should seek out these top coordinators. That made sense. After all, Hone was known for its fertile land and warm climate, producing more berries than any other region. Lily Cove City even had a dedicated berry market, where you could find virtually any kind of berry imaginable. However, many of Hone's berries didn't adapt well to other regions, which was why they weren't widely cultivated outside of Hone. This is a rare candy. Eating it will increase all of a Pokémon's abilities. Hikaru continued showcasing his exclusive products. Maybe Steven would only give a nod of approval to his Pokeblocks after all. There were other top coordinators who could make high-quality ones by hand, even if most found it too time-consuming and relied on machines. But rare candies, now that was something no machine or person could replicate. In the Pokémon anime, rare candies had never been shown, except for a failed attempt by a Team Rocket scientist who tried to develop a similar product. However, instead of enhancing a Pokémon's abilities, it caused them to grow enormous and lose control. And this one Sinnoh secret potion. It provides a slight boost to all 5 of a Pokémon's base stats, and it works even better when taken with a rare candy. Listening to the descriptions of these miraculous items, Stephen took a deep breath, falling into deep thought. He wasn't doubting the effectiveness of these items. There was nothing to doubt. Instead, he was thinking about something else entirely. His gaze toward Hikaru grew more intense, and he finally came to a firm decision. Ever since witnessing the wonders of this workshop firsthand, an idea had slowly taken shape in Stephen's mind. Hikaru. Have you ever considered leaving Sinnoh? Stephen finally voiced his thoughts. It wasn't just about mining. He and Hikaru shared a common passion for excavation, but Hikaru was also highly skilled in Pokémon breeding. Plus, his workshop could create miraculous tools. Stephen was certain that these items would become highly sought after in battles and competitions in the future. It was only a matter of time. You mean? Hikaru was puzzled. Stephen got straight to the point. I'll be frank, Hikaru, I believe your breeding techniques and crafting skills are truly unique. If you're interested, have you ever considered coming to Hone to work for Devon Corporation? Of course, I'm not asking you to abandon your current identity and become a researcher. What I'm proposing is for you to lead the development of some specialized products at Devon. Devon Corporation, headquartered in Rustboro City, Hone, had started as a small company focused on mining iron and refining steel. But over the years, it had grown into a world-renowned enterprise, rivaling even Silphco of Kanto. As Devon expanded, its research shifted beyond steel and energy, extending into Pokémon and trainer-related technologies. Items such as the Pokénav, Devon Scope, Dive Gear, Luxury Ball, Cherish Ball, Net Ball, and Timer Ball were all Devon products. They had even begun researching Pokémon's dream world long ago, though their progress had been slow. In the end, Professor Fennel of Unova had beaten them to it by developing the Sea Gear. That was to be expected after all. The Entralink, the main gateway to the dream world, was located in Unova. Hone was simply too far away, and the signal reception was poor. For Hone residents, Devon products were already deeply integrated into their daily lives. Stephen rarely recruited talent himself. That was usually his father, Mr. Stone's, responsibility. After all, Mr. Stone was the company president, while Stephen was just the heir. However, the potential of Hikaru's tools made Stephen think if Devon didn't recruit him, other major corporations from different regions would surely come knocking. Since that was inevitable, why shouldn't he secure the opportunity first? Although the thought felt a bit opportunistic, Stephen believed that in the face of technological advancement, traditional craftsmanship would eventually be overshadowed by mass production. He initially wanted to explain this to Hikaru, but then he hesitated. If Hikaru's dream was to become a legendary craftsman, like the renowned Iron Master, relying on his reputation and exclusive craftsmanship, then saying such things would be disrespectful. Even the Iron Master's son worked at Silphco in a key development role. In fact, modern Pokeballs were developed using the traditional apricorn ball crafting methods that the Iron Master's son had helped refine. That same research even led to the creation of the most powerful Pokeball, the Master Ball. Stephen's gaze burned with sincerity as he looked at Hikaru. Sinnoh's craftsmanship held many secrets, and he was certain Hikaru had even more hidden talents. If these techniques could be integrated into modern technological development, Devon Corporation would become the pride of Hone, surpassing all other major companies. Faced with Stephen's proposal, Hikaru fell into contemplation, but he didn't take long before shaking his head. Craftsmanship carries the wisdom of past generations. Some things cannot simply be replicated through technology. While it might seem unconvincing coming from a craftsman like me, you must know that every region has top-tier artisans who would never sell their techniques to corporations. The power of science is undeniable, but I believe some handcrafted items must be personally made by skilled artisans. If they were mass-produced by machines, their effects would be greatly diminished or even lost entirely. That's just how this world works. Stephen's enthusiasm slowly subsided, and he let out a soft sigh with a smile. I knew it. Top-tier craftsmen always have this unshakable dedication. They're not easy to recruit. But I still want to try. Even if Devon doesn't pursue this, other companies will eventually take notice of your products and attempt to replicate them. Whoever gets there first will have the advantage in the market. So, my second proposal is, if you are willing, Devon Corporation would like to collaborate with you. We could develop new Pokémon-related items together. Whether for battles or training, we can explore all possibilities. The key would be to establish product copyrights, and we could create lower-tier versions for mass production. You wouldn't need to move to Hone, just serve as a technical consultant. Hikaru understood everything Steven was saying. He had known from the moment he arrived in this world. So, selling his techniques outright? Not an option. But collaboration? That was something worth considering. I knew this day would come the moment I became a craftsman. But, if it's Devon, I think I could consider it. Chapter 113. Having successfully recruited a top-tier talent as a collaborator, Steven's mood grew even brighter. However, he soon noticed Hikaru looking at him strangely. I'll personally draft the contract once I return, and Is there something on my face? No. Hikaru chuckled. It's just that I've always heard that the young heir of Devon Corp is a stone enthusiast who rarely concerns himself with the company's internal affairs. Not to mention, you're also the champion of Hone. Do you plan on inheriting Devon in the future? Steven smiled. My father is getting on in years. To allow me the freedom to collect rare stones, he has taken on all the company's responsibilities. If possible, I do intend to return and inherit the company someday. As for the champion title, I already have someone in mind as my successor. However, I don't plan to retire just yet. Hikaru nodded in understanding. Mr. Stone, Steven's father, was one of the most respected and hard-working corporate leaders. From a humble sailor to the founder of a massive mining corporation, his life was a true inspirational story. What was even more admirable was that despite Devon's enormous success, Mr. Stone still adhered to his original principles. On certain critical research projects, he had the wisdom and courage to halt operations when necessary, a rare quality in business. Of course, during its competition with the giant Mauve holding company in Hone, Devon might have used some underhanded tactics, but such things were commonplace in corporate rivalries. Compared to Silphco, which also appeared in the games, Devon had a much stronger presence. The only two questionable things Devon had done were attempting to capture Rayquaza and researching infinite energy. But compared to later organizations like the Ether Foundation and Macrocosmos, Devon was relatively benign. Hikaru contemplated the idea that even if Devon replicated his tools, the final products would likely be weakened versions, essentially what would be considered normal items in the games. After all, his own tools were enhanced versions refined through special craftsmanship. As he and Steven had discussed earlier, some things simply couldn't be replicated through technology. Modern science still had only a shallow understanding of elemental energy, natural energy, and various mystical forces in the Pokémon world. Hikaru asked, so, what's the first thing you plan to replicate? Many of these items aren't easy to study, or, do you plan on buying all of them and taking them back? Steven gave a confident smile. Since I'm here at your workshop, of course, I plan on taking everything back with me as long as you have enough stock. Hikaru wasn't about to let such a wealthy client walk away empty-handed. Since he had decided to collaborate with Devon, he needed to show them what he was capable of. I mentioned this earlier. I recently acquired a batch of new materials and was planning to craft some new tools. If you're willing to wait a little while, you can buy those as well. Steven nodded immediately. Of course. Before coming to Sinnoh, I had already delegated my responsibilities in Hone. I also attended a fossil research conference in Pewter City, Kanto. Now that the conference is over, I have no pressing matters. Actually, I'd say my time here in Sinnoh is the most important thing right now. Before Hikaru could reply, a beeping sound came from his computer. He opened the Pokénet software to check the message. If you don't mind, I'd like to visit your workshop soon. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Cynthia, a mythology researcher from Sinnoh. Through certain channels, I've learned that archaeological teams occasionally visit Johto's ruins from Sinnoh. Hikaru's mind went blank for a moment. Cynthia. He had already suspected it before. Her team's Pokémon lineup was way too familiar, but he hadn't expected his guess to be confirmed so soon. The champion of Sinnoh, it made sense. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Johto protagonist encountered Cynthia while investigating the ruins of Ulf with an event distributed Arceus. That event had led to a special cutscene at Sinjar ruins. Based on Steven's comments about Hone's timeline, Hikaru could infer that the events of Heart Gold/Soul Silver had just ended, meaning Sinnoh's main story was now in its mid-stage. If so, Cynthia arriving in Sinnoh at this time was perfectly aligned with the story's timeline. But unlike in the games, there wouldn't be any event-distributed Arceus in real life. Which meant Johto's protagonist, Ethan, Hibiki in the Japanese version, wouldn't be bringing Arceus to Sinjar ruins. So, according to the storyline, the person meeting Cynthia at Sinjar ruins should be, me, Lance, Grandpa of the Mountain, and his Alakazam. Before arriving in Sinnoh, Cynthia had already gathered information about the 3 mythical stages from ancient records. However, she hadn't yet confirmed Arceus' existence. In the games, she only deduced the truth after Ethan brought Arceus to Sinja ruins and recited an ancient inscription. On the stage of light, only Arceus shall be worshipped. But this time, it looked like he would be the one explaining things to Cynthia. But Wataru must never find out about this. After all, when they were at the 3 mythical stages, Hikaru had vehemently denied knowing anything about them. Stephen, noticing Hikaru's silence, asked, "Did you just get another order?" "No." Hikaru chuckled. "More like another client just like you. She wants to visit my workshop to research mythology." She introduced herself as Cynthia. "I think that name sounds familiar." Stephen laughed. "No way. The champion of Sinnoh. Your workshop is really popular. Even in Johto and Kanto, scholars are paying close attention to your sculptures. When I passed through New Bark Town on my way here, Professor Elm specifically mentioned how grateful he was for your sculptures. They've helped him significantly in his Pokémon egg research." Professor Elm's egg research? Hikaru's mind clicked. So that Arceus sculpture he sold earlier, one of the buyers was Professor Elm? And based on Stephen's comments, other researchers from different regions had also bought them? Well, that made sense. Arceus sculptures had the special effect of radiant birth. Professor Elm was the leading expert on Pokémon breeding, of course, he wouldn't pass up an item like that. So, did his research succeed? Stephen nodded. Yes. And one of the Pokémon hatched was a shiny Chikorita. It's also much larger than normal. A shiny alpha Pokémon. That was incredible luck. Hikaru stroked his chin, looking impressed. I didn't expect him to hatch a shiny alpha Pokémon on his first try. No wonder he's the leading expert in Pokémon breeding and egg research. New trainers must be thrilled. Most starter Pokémon were shiny locked, and getting an alpha Pokémon as a starter was nearly impossible. Even though Chikorita wasn't the easiest choice for Johto's gyms, a shiny alpha would definitely make up for it. This was the definition of pain and joy. Alpha Pokémon. Stephen caught on to Hikaru's phrasing. Hikaru realized he had used an unfamiliar term and quickly explained. Oh, right. Alpha Pokémon aren't common in the modern world. They're essentially larger, stronger versions of their species. Sometimes, their eyes glow red, and they tend to be more aggressive due to the immense energy they carry. Hikaru pointed outside. The Ilex Forest is one of the most ancient and pristine forests in the world. It might be home to Alpha Pokémon, though I haven't confirmed it yet. Encounters with Alpha Pokémon are dangerous, so I always carry a Celebi sculpture when entering the forest. Not long ago, I met Celebi itself and received its blessing, which allows me to move freely through the area. Stephen's expression became serious. You've met Celebi? Wait, have you? Hikaru asked curiously. Stephen hesitated. Perhaps. Hikaru's eyes sparkled. Wait, could it be that this fusion world incorporated elements from Pokémon adventures? Before he could dwell on it, Hikaru changed the topic. Speaking of which, before you arrived, I received an unusual order. Stephen, as Hoen's champion and a renowned gem collector, have you ever heard of a white stone of gratitude? Stephen frowned. I've never heard of such a stone. But Moss Deep City does have a wishing stone, a white stone placed there to pray for the success of space launches. Chapter 114. Even Stephen, a renowned gem collector, had never heard of this white stone of gratitude. Hikaru found this somewhat troubling. Though Giratina had mentioned that an ordinary stone could work as a substitute, Hikaru still wanted to fulfill the client's request properly, especially since the client was Giratina itself. If he could build a good relationship with Giratina, he might get unlimited access to the distortion world for rare materials. Moreover, as a descendant of the Shinto ruins, he shared a psychic link with Giratina. By extension, they could be considered friends, right? Meanwhile, Stephen murmured thoughtfully, still unconvinced about the stone's supposed significance. However, he pointed out that wishing stones might be considered a form of gratitude. Looks like I'll have to ask Regirock about this. I've heard of the White Stone in Moss Deep City, and it's said to be a strange rock, but I don't think it's the White Stone of Gratitude. With that decision, Hikaru planned to consult another rock excavator. Regirock Stephen's expression shifted slightly as he hesitantly asked, speaking of which, I've been wondering for a while now, how exactly do you obtain ancient rocks from Rock? And where did you learn its exclusive moves? Even my friend has never seen those techniques before. Just what kind of rock is this? Oh, well, due to some unexpected circumstances, Rock woke up from its slumber in the Rock Peak ruins. Its temple was severely damaged, so it sought me out for help with repairs. Actually, I was planning to leave and start fixing it right after meeting with you. Who knows, you and Rock might have a lot to talk about. The one I met is quite skilled at digging up rare stones. It even unearthed a second Eviolite. Hikaru's eyes suddenly lit up. Stephen, you also study ruins, don't you? While Cynthia would have been the best expert on ruins, Stephen frequently excavated minerals in the wild, often coming across various ancient sites. Perhaps he would have useful advice for restoring ruins. Though Hikaru had mastered 3 major restoration techniques, he had never actually used them. Getting Stephen's input could prove valuable. Rock Peak ruins. Stephen's eyes glowed with curiosity and intrigue. A Rock actively communicating with humans? That was entirely different from the ones he knew. Somewhere deep in his memory, he vaguely recalled encountering the Regis before. But the recollection was blurry, so much so that he wondered if it was just an illusion formed after meeting Brandon and his Rock. In the past, he had never imagined that Rock could provide such useful ancient minerals. Even Brandon hadn't mentioned anything about it. Perhaps he didn't know either? And this Rock, it could dig up rare stones. Another evolutionary stone. Stephen's eyes burned with excitement. I'd love to meet this Rock. And please let me help with the ruin restoration as well. As expected, the moment rare stones were involved, Stephen couldn't contain himself. He and Hikaru dove into an intense discussion about the formation of evolutionary stones. Since Hikaru often excavated minerals in the wild, his experience could almost categorize him as a hiker. While talking with Stephen, he felt his knowledge rapidly expanding, branching into new insights. You have received guidance from a professional rock collector and have obtained advanced knowledge of rocks. Advanced knowledge of rocks enhances your craftsmanship skills, improving all rock-related techniques. Hikaru's eyes sparkled. He had obtained Stephen's knowledge. By engaging in deep discussions with experts, he could fully grasp their expertise and even build upon it. As their conversation continued, night began to fall. Suddenly, Hikaru remembered something important and quickly asked. Even if we don't have any clues about the White Stone of Gratitude, Stephen, do you know any berry experts? I've been struggling to find a particular material and was wondering if there's a master in tree cultivation who could help. As he spoke, Hikaru took out a golden leaf and a silver leaf. Stephen examined the 2 shimmering leaves and once again fell into deep thought. Yet another thing he had never seen before. Even with all his field experience, he had never encountered materials like these. These leaves are beautiful. So, are you looking for the tree that produces them? Stephen took the leaves into his hands, his expression becoming more serious. Their texture wasn't like regular leaves, they were soft yet durable, feeling more like fabric, while their sheen resembled metal. Hikaru explained, these leaves can be found in Kanto and Johto. You can occasionally find them among fallen leaves from various trees, but the exact tree that produces them remains a mystery. That's why I wanted to consult experts in tree cultivation. Maybe they have insights on growing special trees. I've even found these leaves among my own berry trees, so I'm wondering what kind of tree could be the best base for cultivating them. Stephen smiled and handed the leaves back. They may not be stones, but rare materials intrigue me all the same. These leaves must be important crafting components, right? As your collaborator, I'll do everything I can to help you. That's right. These 2 leaves are the key ingredients for 2 powerful items. Hikaru handed over 2 blueprints: weakness policy and assault vest. After hearing about their effects, Stephen's smile immediately vanished, replaced by a serious expression. These items, they're incredibly powerful. In that case, I must ask the best berry experts to focus their efforts on cultivating these leaves. Devon Corporation will also allocate resources to research alternative methods of cultivation. At first, he thought the leaves were just rare collectibles, but now he realized they could be turned into mysterious battle-enhancing tools. If Hone could be the first region to cultivate these trees. With exclusive access to these crafting materials, Hone would become a premier competitive battling hub, attracting investments from companies and the League itself. This would be huge for the Hone League, which was often seen as a more rural, less influential region. Hone has the best climate and the most fertile land. No region is better suited for cultivating special plants. Stephen was already formulating plans. He wasn't an expert in tree cultivation, but he knew the right people for the job. Regi. A deep, booming voice echoed from outside the workshop. The moment Stephen heard it, he immediately recognized it. He had heard the same call before at Brandon's training site. There was no doubt it was Regirock. Outside the workshop, Stephen's Metagross was staring at the towering golem in confusion. A legendary giant. Metagross had encountered one before, but to see another one here. Wait, what was it doing? Regirock reached out and patted Metagross's body, its H-shaped face glowing brightly. Yo, you've developed quite well. Almost as strong as my brother, Registeel. Metagross. Metagross stood still, staring blankly. Are all the Pokémon in this workshop absolute weirdos? Regirock. You and Turtwig are back. Hikaru and Stephen walked out of the workshop, just as Unown floated over, shaking its body indignantly since it hadn't been called. All right, Unown, you're back too. Hikaru chuckled, and Unown finally looked satisfied. Exactly. You can't just focus on those two. I did a lot today too. You're both covered in injuries. Weren't you supposed to be training? Hikaru asked, frowning at Lilligant, who also shook her head, indicating she had no idea what had happened. Regirock had multiple cracks across its body, with chunks of stone missing, though it didn't seem to care much. Meanwhile, Turtwig was covered in bruises and scratches, but the medicinal herbs on its back were completely intact. Turtwig and Regirock exchanged looks and then laughed together. That was some intense training today. Good thing Unown created such a strong Pokémon to help us, and thankfully, it didn't go out of control, right? Look at all these wounds, let's get you patched up right away. Hikaru quickly pulled out herbal potions, repair tools, and recovery items, including revitalizing blocks and healing salves. The Pokémon stood patiently as he treated them, while Stephen observed the unfamiliar medicine with great interest. What is that? Hikaru explained, a special herbal potion I made. It restores a Pokémon's stamina while also healing hidden internal injuries and illnesses. The Unova champion once bought some from me. If you're interested, I have plenty in stock. Under Stephen's watchful gaze, Turtwig drank the herbal potion, and its injuries began fading almost immediately. The recovery speed was faster than a hyper potion, practically on par with a full restore. However, unlike a full restore, this potion could also heal old, lingering injuries, something regular medicines couldn't do. Stephen's gaze instinctively drifted to Metagross. His Metagross had been by his side since he was a child, enduring countless battles. Though his close friend, Wallace, was a top-tier Pokémon breeder and had helped it recover, Metagross had still accumulated many hidden scars over the years. Thinking about that now, Stephen suddenly felt guilty. I'm sorry, Metagross. Metagross tilted its head, confused by Stephen's sudden words, but then noticed something in his eyes. It was the same look Stephen had given it many years ago. Metagross understood. There's no need to apologize. As the champion, you have your responsibilities. Seeking strength is part of your nature, it's what you must do. Stephen's expression was complicated as he reached out to pat Metagross's claw. The two old friends silently reaffirmed their bond. Then, Stephen turned to look at the injured Regirock. Regirock stared back, its H-shaped face glowing faintly. So this is the one Hikaru was waiting for? But he carries the aura of rare stones. Regirock suddenly spoke up. Stephen blinked in surprise, and Hikaru listened for a moment before translating. Regirock is asking if you are also someone who enjoys digging up rare stones. It senses an intense mineral aura from you. You can understand Pokémon. Stephen exclaimed. Until now, Hikaru had never shown such an ability. And Regirock's language wasn't like that of normal Pokémon. Brandon's Regirock, for instance, was barely understood by others. Hikaru smiled. I have psychic abilities. I can understand the language of ghost Pokémon, and due to certain circumstances, I can also comprehend the speech of ancient Pokémon. Regirock's language is like human dialects. Pokémon from different regions may struggle to understand it, just as people sometimes have trouble with unfamiliar accents. Stephen was still reeling from this revelation when Regirock spoke again. Hikaru's expression turned amused. Oh, this is interesting. Regirock had not forgotten one of its earlier ideas. Now that it had seen Stephen, it was getting excited. So it's true stand users, I mean, rare stone diggers are drawn to one another. It's asking if you have any special stones. It also has some stones and wants to trade with you. Hikaru sighed. Previously, Regirock mentioned that after repairing Rock Peak ruins, it wanted to turn the site into a place where Pokémon could trade items with one another, kind of like my workshop. Maybe because it once lived alongside the ancient people of Johto, its behavior is closer to that of humans. Steven's face lit up in delight. This Regirock was completely different from the ones in his vague memories, or even the one Brandon owned. It was like a kindred spirit. Steven and Regirock locked eyes, their shared passion for rare stones forming an unspoken bond. Then Hikaru suddenly asked, "By the way, do you know anything about the White Stone of Gratitude?" Regirock's H symbol flashed. Shasha Lily. It responded that it had never heard of a Stone of Gratitude specifically, but it had seen white stones before near the Grassidea Flower Garden, in an ancient Johto burial site. New fanfic. Naruto, 1 wish per day. Normally, one shouldn't enter the Shinto forest as night approaches, it's extremely dangerous. However, upon hearing a lead about the whereabouts of Shiraishi's gratitude, Steven couldn't hold back. Digging up rare stones was more important than anything else, and with Steven as a companion, Hikaru also felt more confident. Within the Shinto forest, the strongest Pokémon in the outer areas were a leader Scyther and what seemed to be an Ursaring, but in the presence of a champion, these Pokémon were hardly a threat. Hikaru performed a simple restoration on Regirock's body, a display of craftsmanship that left Steven marveling. Following this, Steven and Regirock began chatting, with Hikaru acting as a translator. The more they talked, the more they got along. Steven was utterly shocked to discover that Regirock could accurately identify the formation process and locations of various stones. This was knowledge only possessed by truly skilled mineralogists. Incredible! Rock-type Pokémon usually only know which stones are beneficial to their bodies and will stay near mineral veins to keep intruders out, but Regirock is different. Is this because it learned from humans? Or do the giants inherently possess such knowledge? If Regirock weren't Hikaru's friend, practically his Pokémon at this point, Steven would have been tempted to convince it to join him. After all, a Pokémon that could provide excavation advice and even help dig up stones manually, how could a gemstone collector resist? It was a perfect match, a dream come true. The setting sun cast golden beams through the gaps in the treetops, illuminating the soil of the Shinto forest. Leading the way was the giant, followed by Hikaru and Steven, alongside Dowblade, Lilligant, Turtwig, and Metagross. Their destination was the Rock Mountain ruins. After reaching it, they continued deeper into the forest, eventually arriving at a deep valley. The surrounding trees bore signs of having been cut down. Hikaru noticed the tree stumps and cut marks, but what caught his attention most were the ruined structures and numerous ancient tombstones scattered throughout the valley. Regi. Regirock let out a strange sound, seemingly in mourning. Although its voice didn't sound much different from usual, Hikaru could sense an undercurrent of sadness in its heart. It's saying that when it awoke, it saw the tombs left behind by the ancient people of Shinto. After the gods disappeared, it fell into slumber, and upon waking again, found these graves. Everyone quietly observed the ancient cemetery. Regirock suddenly raised an arm, halting their progress. Because that thing had appeared. Whoosh! A shadowy fist suddenly shot out from the depths of the valley, slamming into the ground before Hikaru and Steven. Moments later, from the void itself, a massive, pitch-black figure materialized like a ghost. A ghost-type giant Dusk Noir. The black fist that had just struck the ground was none other than the ghost-type move Shadow Punch, a warning. Dusk Noir ignored Hikaru and Steven, its gaze locking onto Regirock. A legendary giant. What business do you have here? Dusk Noir was the guardian of this ancient graveyard and was responsible for guiding wandering spirits around Shinto. Among these tombs was an ancient soul that refused to leave, and until that soul was properly guided away, Dusk Noir wouldn't allow anyone to desecrate this place. Regirock didn't hesitate to call out Dusk Noir, directly accusing it of trespassing into its own shrine in the past. Dusk Noir quickly explained, saying that it hadn't entered intentionally. It was because that Scyther had disturbed the graveyard's peace and even used thief to steal an important artifact from here, forcing Dusk Noir to chase it down. So, if there was nothing urgent, they should leave immediately. Regirock stated that it was here to retrieve the white stones. White stones? Dusk Noir hesitated, glancing toward the most prominent white monument among the tombstones. Indeed, there were white stones similar to that monument scattered around the area. However, those were sacred items of the graveyard. Aside from some peculiar flowers, nothing else should be taken. Those white stones contained mysterious power, and disturbing them might prevent the slumbering soul from awakening. If that happened, Dust Noir's duty would be left unfulfilled. Looks like negotiations failed. Stephen assessed the situation, his Metagross standing beside him, its sharp eyes locked onto Dusk Noir. Feeling the immense strength of the steel behemoth, Dusk Noir immediately grew tense. Could it truly protect this graveyard with its strength alone? We have no intention of fighting you. Hikaru stepped forward and used his advanced spiritual knowledge to communicate with Dusk Noir. Dusk Noir could feel the intense spiritual energy radiating from Hikaru. It carefully extended its senses, attempting to establish a soul connection. But in the next moment, its soul was forcefully dragged into another world. A void storm, distorted structures, an inverted sky, massive crystalline pillars, and a shadowy, centipede-like black-winged dragon looming above. Gah! A gaze from the ruler of shadows fell upon Dusk Noir. Giratina had sensed Dusk Noir's presence through Hikaru's soul and was extremely displeased by its intrusion. This was Shinto. How dare a mere spirit world guardian attempt to establish a connection with a descendant of the gods? In the next moment, Giratina suddenly sensed something on Dusk Noir's body. It paused briefly before pouring all of its ghostly energy into its soul link with Hikaru. Overwhelmed by this surge of immense energy, Dusk Noir recoiled in fear, its single eye shrinking in shock, frantically waving its hands in surrender. The spiritual power of this psychic was far too overwhelming. What it had just witnessed through the soul link was that truly the ruler of the distorted world. A cold sweat formed on Dusk Noir's spectral body. It no longer had any idea who this human before it really was. At first, it had planned to use force to drive these intruders away, but now, that was clearly impossible. Wait! Dusk Noir suddenly realized something, its single eye widening in astonishment. Could this psychic before it be the one spoken of in the spirit world's transmissions? The human who died and returned to life. The one who won the resurrection battle. That Dusk Noir has something valuable on it. Giratina's soul-bound voice echoed in Hikaru's mind, making him pause in surprise. He hadn't expected Giratina, all the way in the distorted world, to be able to communicate with him like this. Perhaps I can help you guide that lingering soul to the afterlife, Hikaru suggested. In exchange, allow us to take some of the white stones. Dusk Noir's hostility faded. The sheer power of the human before it was beyond imagination, a psychic who had a direct connection with a colossal ghostly dragon that ruled an entire world. This was a first for Dusk Noir. And more than that, he had returned from the dead, a feat even Dusk Noir itself had never accomplished. Perhaps, this human truly could complete its duty. After a moment of silence, Dusk Noir gave a nod and turned, leading Hikaru toward the white tombstone. Hikaru crouched down and wiped the dust from the white stone monument, carefully examining its inscriptions. Then, he called for Dao Blade and retrieved several pure incense talismans from its sheath. Elite 4 Phoebe had once said that her talismans could guide lost souls to the afterlife, making them incredibly useful spiritual tools. Hikaru himself didn't fully understand how to use spiritual energy to help lost souls pass on, but his craftsmanship could achieve the same effect. With that in mind, Hikaru placed the pure incense talismans onto the white tombstone, then observed the stone's description. Precious material, gratitude white stone, tombstone, unusable, ... Description: an ancient white stone, polished to a mirror-like sheen, shaped into a tombstone. It is said that inscribing words of gratitude upon this stone will allow one's feelings to be perfectly conveyed to their friends. This stone is... Hikaru's eyes widened as a realization struck him. So that's what the gratitude white stone was. In Pokémon Platinum, if a trainer obtains a letter from Professor Rowan, they can travel to Seabreak Path. At the start of the path, there is a large white boulder. By writing words of gratitude on the stone, the trainer will encounter the gratitude Pokémon, Shaman, and be able to follow it into Flower Paradise. The once barren land at the path's end would immediately transform into a field of vibrant flowers upon Shaman's arrival. For a brief moment, Hikaru saw visions in his mind. A scene from the past, when this ruin was still intact. A city-state, its buildings made of stone and mud, where people lived peacefully. Children laughed and played in the streets. Then, a girl appeared, a girl whose face was blurred and indistinct. She grew from a child to a young woman, from youth to middle age, and finally to old age. Her surroundings, though vague, continued to shift and change. Eventually, the vision faded. The settlement disappeared, leaving only a single final tombstone behind. Upon it, ancient letters were inscribed in unknown script. The golden rays of the setting sun filtered through the forest canopy, casting a dappled glow over the ancient inscription. Here, I shall rest for eternity. I pray to the gods. Forever, I shall wait. I only hope, that one day, we shall meet again. The one I am most grateful to, is Hikaru. Thank you, for giving me life. At the bottom, the name was signed. Vesa. Chapter 116. A feeling of gratitude emanated from the stone tablet, and when Hikaru saw the signature, his eyes widened slightly. This name, it felt familiar. It should be from the game. Fragments of strange, scattered memories flashed through his mind, but they vanished as quickly as they appeared. Suddenly, Hikaru felt a headache, and at the same time, Giratina's ghostly energy took over the core of his spiritual power, stabilizing his mental state. He never expected that the hot-tempered Giratina would actually help him stabilize his mind. Your soul is unstable. Memories that shouldn't exist have surfaced. But don't worry, this should be a normal phenomenon. Giratina's whisper echoed within his soul, yet Hikaru didn't quite understand what it meant. What did it mean by things that shouldn't exist? And why was that considered normal? As expected of the ruler of the reverse world, its words made no sense. If I put it this way. Sensing Hikaru's confusion, Giratina carefully chose its words before continuing. It didn't want to be a cryptic mystery dragon. When the past is rewritten, these kinds of things happen. The timeline is out of sync. But this isn't my area of expertise, so I won't say too much. Giratina left half of its explanation unsaid. If it spoke recklessly about time-related matters and got it wrong, it would be a huge embarrassment. That wouldn't do. It was the ruler of the reverse world, the great shadow lurking behind the real world. If it lost face in front of its soul-bound partner, how many excuses would it take to recover its dignity? It was all Dialga's fault. Messing around with time travel again. That guy was always doing this kind of thing. Hikaru thought of something: the events in Pokémon, Arceus and the Jewel of Life. In that movie, when Arceus, enraged, was about to destroy the world, Dialga had sent Ash and his friends back in time 1,000 years to rewrite the history of Mishina and thus change the future. At that moment, the white stone tablet before Hikaru emitted a faint glow. He instinctively took a step back as the Pokémon around him, along with Steven, kept their eyes fixed on the changing tablet. Unuan. Dusk Noir suddenly grew excited. The soul was about to awaken. Its mission was finally complete. It grasped Hikaru's small hand with its large one and shook it vigorously, expressing its gratitude. As a wisp of ghostly blue fire emerged from the tablet, it transformed into the indistinct shape of a young girl. A soul had materialized, though her appearance remained somewhat unclear. She wore ancient clothing, its colors resembling those of Celebi. Seeing Hikaru, the girl first looked surprised before breaking into a delighted smile. When you write words on a white stone, you can precisely convey your gratitude to a friend. The person I want to thank the most is Hikaru. At that moment, Hikaru's memories returned. Vesa, wasn't she the soul sealed within the odd keystone in Pokémon Legends, Arceus? The odd keystone was the object used to seal Spiritomb, a Pokémon formed by the fusion of 108 souls. It was believed that some of these souls were particularly malicious, making Spiritomb a sinister entity created from evil thoughts. Having committed numerous misdeeds, it was eventually bound to the odd keystone by a mysterious spell to prevent further harm. In the Pokémon world, all Spiritomb were suspected to have been sealed by a legendary traveler skilled in mystical arts. In the anime, that traveler was an Aura Guardian accompanied by a Pikachu. However, not all the souls within the odd keystone were evil. Vesa was one such soul, a normal girl. In the Hisui era, a massive Spiritomb had escaped from the giant odd keystone at Cloudcap Pass. To reseal it, Vesa sought help from the protagonist in Jubilife village, gathering 108 ghostly flames to subdue Spiritomb once again. But that happened in Hisui. Why was one of Spiritomb's 108 souls, Vesa, appearing in Sinnoh? And why was her attire different from what it was in the game? Do you know me? Why are you thanking me? Hikaru asked the ghostly girl in disbelief, and Vesa tilted her head slightly, as if realizing something. Ah, I see. While I have met you, the current you does not yet know me. But even so, you are still you. I must thank you. Thank you for giving me new life. You must be wondering why I am here. Because I was originally from Sinnoh. According to the game's lore, Vesa had mentioned that the spiritomb binding her had once caused disasters in Hisui centuries ago before being sealed away by the spell of a mysterious traveler. And now, she was saying she was originally from Sinnoh, meaning that Vesa was one of the people of Shindo. The people of Shinto dispersed, returned to Hisui, and then perished. Hikaru realized something. Between 1,700 years ago, the people of Shinto gradually disappeared, some integrating into Johto, while others returned to Hisui. Some of those who crossed the sea back to Hisui founded the Diamond Clan and the Pearl Clan, shifting their faith toward Dialga and Palkia, losing their original belief in Arceus. I have been waiting here. Just to thank you. Just to see you one more time. Vesa turned toward Dusk Noir. That object, is it in your hands? Thank you for keeping it safe for me. Now, it is time to return it. Yunuan. Dusk Noir suddenly realized something. It reached into the mouth on its belly and pulled out a red orb. That's... The moment Steven saw the orb, he immediately recognized it. It was an extremely rare mineral found in nature. Its formation process remained a mystery, and even Devon Corporation had attempted to manufacture it artificially but with little success. Steven exclaimed, "That's a life orb. A very precious stone." Dusk Noir handed the red orb to Hikaru and explained to Regirock that the Caesar from before had heard rumors about a mystical orb in this place, which was why it had tried to steal it. The item it had been guarding all along was this red orb discovered near the tombstone. Precious material, life orb. Description: a gem infused with immense life energy, rumored to be crystallized from the souls of humans or Pokémon. Similar crystals occasionally appear in nature. When held, it slightly drains HP with each attack but significantly boosts the power of moves. Acquired knowledge, +1. Bond of life, your and your trained Pokémon's HP and strength increase by 30%. Acquired crafting skill, +1. Orb crafting, A+ allows the creation of unique orbs using corresponding natural energy crystals and materials from Pokémon. Requires spirit forging technique and awakening power. Hikaru could sense an extraordinary pulse of life energy within the orb, while Vesa simply smiled at him. It's time for me to go. This life you once gave me, I now return it to you. Thank you, Hikaru. Vesa embraced Hikaru briefly before waving farewell. As Hikaru stood in a daze, Dusk Noir grasped her hand and emitted a signal indicating the completion of its task. At the same time, Dusk Noir turned toward Hikaru with a reminder. Yunuan. You, Nuuan. Although you're powerful, there's something that needs to be said. Whether it's appropriate or not, well, I'll just say it. Dusk Noir's eyes flickered with an eerie red glow. Yunuan, your soul is deeply connected to the ruler of the reverse world, but your spiritual energy is too similar in nature to the distortion world. Because of this, you must be cautious. The distortion world has an inherent pull. As a guardian of the spirit realm, Dusk Noir knew well that the distortion world harbored a certain hostility toward the real world. Life and death were naturally opposing forces. Malicious Pokémon and wayward spirits that had escaped from the spirit realm often lurked around those with unusual soul abilities. Hikaru needed to be extremely careful. Do not be swayed by the power of the distortion world and fall into its grasp. And there was something else. Dusk Noir reached into the mouth on its belly and pulled out a piece of reaper cloth, though something seemed to be wrapped inside. Yunuan. As a token of gratitude, Dusk Noir decided to gift Hikaru something it had once found in this cemetery, a mysterious stone tablet. After all, this artifact was a relic of ancient Sinnoh. Now that its task was complete, and Hikaru had proven to be the one the spirits here had been waiting for, Dusk Noir no longer had a reason to hold onto the tablet. Additionally, the Reaper cloth was another token of appreciation. However, Dusk Noir wanted to trade these materials for Hikaru's charms. It then pointed toward Dao Blade, which stood beside them, looking utterly confused. Dusk Noir had seen the purity charm Hikaru used earlier and realized its effectiveness. If it could obtain those charms, its efficiency in guiding spirits would skyrocket. So, trading some ghostly materials for those precious charms, wasn't that a fair deal? Hikaru accepted the cloth-wrapped object. Mythical artifact, Spooky Plate. Description: a ghost-type plate that enhances the power of ghost-type moves when held. Acquired vocational knowledge, +1. Spirit Mastery, increases friendship with ghost-type Pokémon. Acquired unique crafting insight, +1. Discovered a clue to the crafting of a mysterious artifact, +1. Ghostly crafting, B rank. Description: a secret crafting technique passed down in the distortion world. It is said that only those who tread the path of no return can master it. Effect: items crafted using ghostly crafting will possess the special property of being spirit-bound. Requirements: Reaper cloth / tattered cloth / suspicious powder / ghost gem / ghost type Pokémon materials. Mysterious crafting clue, Shinto flute. Relevant locations, Sinnoh graveyard / path of ruin / spear pillar. Required material, white stone of gratitude. Chapter 117. Goodbye, friend. Vessa's soul gradually faded, eventually transforming into a familiar form in Hikaru's memory, a cluster of violet ghostly flames. Dusk Noir opened its belly, absorbing Vessa's spirit flame inside, and waved toward Hikaru. Farewell, powerful human. Next time, I'll bring some materials from the spirit world to exchange for your talismans. Yo no. Dusk Noir cast a glance at Regirock. Now that it could leave this place freely, the legendary giant likely wouldn't be keeping an eye on it anymore. These stones around the graveyard are yours to handle as you wish. The spirits that needed rest have all found peace. Now, this place is just an ordinary cemetery. Yo woo. Dowblade removed the talismans from its body and handed them over to Dusk Noir in one go, making the ghost Pokémon overjoyed. With these talismans that guide spirits to the afterlife, I'll be way ahead of my peers in terms of job efficiency. When I get promoted and earn a raise, I'll be sure to take care of you all. If you ever die, I'll open a VIP passage for you to reincarnate quickly. Dowblade, expressionless. What are you even talking about? That's not the kind of care we need. Behind Dusk Noir, a hazy vortex of time and space emerged, an entrance to the spirit world. As a civil servant of the spirit world, Dusk Noir could freely open these portals. Its figure gradually dimmed and disappeared into the vortex. What an incredible sight! Steven stepped forward, sighing as he watched the spot where Dusk Noir vanished. Though the Elite Four's Phoebe often talked about ghosts being around, Steven had never actually seen one before. This experience was an eye-opener for him. And then there was the Gratitude Stone, capable of preserving a soul and conveying one's will across the ages. How exactly was such a stone formed? Steven's heart was filled with excitement as he gazed at the tombstone and the surrounding white stones. As for why the ghost girl, Vessa, had expressed gratitude toward Hikaru, Steven didn't feel the need to probe too much. It was Hikaru's personal matter. Besides, he hadn't heard Vessa's words just now, as he lacked spiritual power. Instead, he pondered internally. Hikaru truly must have a rich past. Some people can't be judged solely by their age. Sacred places like Shinto hold secrets beyond the comprehension of the outside world. With that, Steven gained a bit more insight into why Hikaru possessed so many extraordinary abilities. Honestly, this felt like encountering a hidden NPC in a game. A secretive craftsman from Shinto, whose goods even messengers of the spirit world sought to purchase. Not to mention, every Pokémon Steven had encountered since arriving here seemed vastly different from those outside. They were all incredibly intelligent. As for the Life Orb, a gem of extraordinary rarity, its formation had long been a mystery. But now, Steven had essentially figured it out. It was a crystallization of soul and life. Perhaps not only human souls, but also those of Pokémon, could form something similar. That would explain why these gemstones were so precious. Now that he thought about it, similar orbs had been discovered before. So, the Life Orb has a composition similar to the mysterious crystal. Back when Steven attended the fossil conference in Pewter City, he had gone there because of the discovery of a peculiar crystal. After analysis by Pewter's top rock experts, it turned out that the beautiful, elegant crystal was none other than the Soul Dew, a special crystallization formed from the souls of Latias or Latios. The Soul Dew could awaken their latent powers, and their spirits resonated with it. That's another mystery of stones solved. No, actually two. Besides the Life Orb and Gratitude Stone, Steven's gaze landed on a deep-colored tablet. Come to think of it, he had seen a similar deep red plate before, tucked beneath a computer at Hikaru's workshop. But since it didn't seem particularly special at the time, he had assumed it was just an ordinary stone artifact and hadn't paid much attention to it. Now that he looked at it again, he realized back when he was excavating rocks, he had seen similar objects in the collections of certain stone fanatics. Meanwhile, Hikaru examined the Life Orb and the dread plate, lost in thought. If things had played out differently, maybe he would have acquired certain knowledge that allowed him to free Vesa from Spiritom's grasp. Or perhaps, in some way, he had traveled even further back in time. Time travel was nothing unusual in the Pokémon world. In many historical incidents, time travel wasn't just an accident, it was an inevitable part of history itself. From the altered timeline in the Hone region's Pokémon adventures, to Egon traversing through time fragments, and even Professor Oak and Ash experiencing their own time-traveling events in the anime, such occurrences were commonplace. And then, there was the true purpose of the Gratitude Stone to craft the Azure Flute. The divine statues along Mount Coronet's ancient pathways in the Hisui era, if Giratina's words were to be believed, they had likely been sculpted using the Gratitude Stone. In that case, it made sense why the Azure Flute, an ancient mystical artifact, could summon the descendants of the 10 hero Pokémon. Let's meet again in the future. Hikaru murmured as he stepped away from the tombstone, heading toward a large white stone nearby. This was an unused Gratitude Stone. The ancient people of Shinto had built cemeteries around these stones, hoping for something beyond words. Regirock stepped forward, lifting the Gratitude Stone, then led the group toward the cemetery's garden. The garden was enclosed by carefully arranged stones. Sparse trees surrounded the area, and it was located atop a small hill. Sunlight reached the flowers within, and it almost seemed as if the trees had intentionally avoided shading this sacred space. This is the Grassidia flower, Stephen recognized them instantly. They were sold in some flower shops in the Hone region. Though rare and precious, Grassidia flowers were not difficult to cultivate artificially. Unlocked, Shinto Cemetery and Ancient Garden. As night approached, Hikaru had Lilligant collect some of the flowers and dug up some soil from the garden before the group left the Shinto forest. Stephen was particularly pleased with this trip. Not only had he uncovered the secret of the life orb, but he had also obtained an unknown type of Gratitude Stone. He also took the opportunity to inquire about the mysterious plates. Hikaru responded simply, explaining that they were special artifacts that could enhance Pokémon abilities. However, their method of creation was unique, even he couldn't replicate them. If Stephen wanted to learn more, Cynthia, the Sinnoh champion, would have better insights. Stephen understood. Devon Corporation wasn't the kind of company to recklessly claim such relics for research. He knew better than to force the issue when it came to items with clear mystical origins. As for accommodations that night, although the workshop was small, it could still fit 2 people. However, the only empty space was the 4th ghost room. Stephen simply chuckled. No need to worry about my sleeping arrangements. I often work in the wild, and I have a certain move that can help with this. If you don't mind, I'd like to stay there. Stephen turned his gaze toward a massive oak tree near the workshop. Hikaru was puzzled. Was Stephen planning to set up a tent under the tree? What are you going to do? It's simple. Metagross, use secret power. At Stephen's command, Metagross's eyes shone with a powerful energy. The normal type move secret power altered depending on the environment, and when used on special trees, bushes, or caves, it triggered a unique effect. Stephen smiled. Have you heard of super secret bases? I can even teach your Pokémon this move. Chapter 118. In the games, secret bases are special spaces that can only be built in specific locations in Hone and Sinnoh. Across Hone, players can find various large trees, grass patches, and walls with small holes. These secret spots can be dug open using the move secret power to create a super secret base. However, in reality, secret power can be used in any outdoor location, whether it be mountains, caves, bushes, large trees, or even underground. Metagross used its move to alter the massive oak tree. Hikaru noticed that a new hollow had appeared in the tree, large enough to enter. Stephen had Metagross carry both him and Hikaru inside the hollow, which formed a special space. Branches automatically gathered together to form the floor, while surrounding leaves converged into walls. At the same time, the interior space was significantly larger than it appeared from the outside. What an incredible move! Hikaru recalled how, while playing Pokémon Emerald, he often searched for suitable locations to build a secret base. It was one of the most enjoyable mechanics in the game. For people who frequently explored the wild, secret power was an essential move to carry. What do you think? This is a unique move from Hone. It allows the creation of a space that blends into nature. You're probably wondering why the inside is larger than it looks from the outside. That's the peculiar aspect of this move. In the games, secret power is taught by the secret base expert Arun, a traveler from Unova. Meanwhile, in Pokémon Emerald, it is gifted by a boy in the game alongside the corresponding trademark. Metagross couldn't fit through the entrance, so it remained floating outside. Meanwhile, Dowblade also hovered in the air, repeatedly flying in and out of the hollow, its two eyes spinning in confusion. It couldn't understand why the outside looked like a small hole, but the inside was so spacious. Murtu. Metagross communicated with Dowblade, recommending that it try using the move itself. From the entrance, Steven and Hikaru peeked inside. Steven stretched out a hand, gesturing as he explained. Secret powers attributes and effects change depending on the environment. The first key to learning this move is for a Pokémon to familiarize itself with its surroundings. Rocks, trees, bushes, and the ground, these are the primary surfaces where secret bases or hiding spots can be created. The Pokémon must synchronize its elemental energy with the natural energy of the environment, accumulate power in the target area, and finally expand outward. In essence, secret power can be seen as a spatial type ability that all Pokémon can potentially master. Steven carefully taught the mechanics, and Hikaru quickly absorbed the knowledge about secret power and secret bases. Before long, new information had formed in his mind. You have learned knowledge about secret power and secret bases. Your understanding of secret bases enhances your ability to use secret power, allowing your Pokémon to utilize it in broader environments and with increased effectiveness. Broader environments? Before Hikaru could ponder further, Dowblade had already finished listening to Steven's explanation. Metagross patiently continued guiding it, and Dowblade excitedly waved its ribbon-like arms. Great! It had learned the theory, now it was time to put it into practice. Dowblade descended from midair while the other Pokémon watched. Focusing its energy, it prepared to execute the move. Murtu. Metagross floated down beside it, providing further guidance. Since both were Steel-type Pokémon, they had similar techniques when using the same move, making the process much easier. Following Metagross' instructions, Dowblade drew its two swords and crossed them, gathering energy in its ribbons. It then performed a strange twisting motion before beginning to spin rapidly like a drill. Under the influence of Dowblade's energy, the ground started rippling like waves. As Dowblade spun at high speed and made contact with the surface, its energy resonated with the natural forces of the surroundings. A new hollow opened up in the ground, forming an entrance. Dowblade has learned secret power. You learned so fast. Steven observed Dowblade's performance with great interest and was impressed by its rapid learning speed. Though, the way you used it looked a bit strange, but that doesn't really matter. Mastering a move wasn't an easy feat. It required repeated practice and refinement, just like how Ash's Pikachu trained tirelessly to perfect Iron Tail, only mastering the technique after extensive effort. This was precisely why TMS existed as a shortcut for Pokémon to learn moves quickly. Metagross let out an approving sound. Even though Dowblade was a bit eccentric, its learning ability was exceptional. Dowblade floated down into the underground space, discovering that the interior was quite large, perfect for use as a basement. At the same time, Hikaru was asking Steven the same question. Will the space created by secret power disappear? If we make a space underground, it seems like a great place for a basement. Of course not, Steven shook his head. These spaces are formed by natural energy. There are many places in the world with similarly strange spatial distortions, right? The principle behind this move is the same as how those spaces form. However, you should be aware that secret spaces created in trees or bushes can still be burnt down. If the supporting tree or bush disappears, then the space will naturally collapse as well. Immediately, various unique ideas about secret power began forming in Hikaru's mind. He had a strong feeling that this move would become incredibly useful for him in the near future. With the move successfully taught, Steven decided to conduct a temporary study on the Gratitude Rock. Although he was curious about Hikaru's crafting process, he felt it was inappropriate to peek at trade secrets, even with Hikaru's permission. After all, Hikaru would naturally share any useful discoveries. But if Steven learned the full crafting process, he knew he'd be tempted to research it further himself. Meanwhile, Hikaru returned to the workshop with his Pokémon. The Gratitude Rock, which had been transported earlier, was placed inside the forge's back shed. Hikaru then lit up the workspace and began carving. All I need to do is embed a portion of the Gratitude Rock. In Hikaru's memory, the statue at the ruins of the Shinto temple had been quite large, but the white stone that Regirock had brought back wasn't as massive. Giratina, maintaining its spiritual connection with Hikaru, whispered softly, indicating that only a portion of the stone would be sufficient. The sound of chiseling quickly filled the air as the carving process began. Using additional stone materials to embed the gratitude stone, Hikaru sketched out Giratina's form while Dao Blade assisted with Psycho Cut, and Lily Gant carefully refined the details with a low-power leaf blade. After a period of focused work, the craftsmanship and skill came together to complete the sculpture of Giratina. In reality, when it came to sculpting speed, Bidolph was the true master. As mentioned in Professor Oak's lectures, a Bidolph had once completed the sculpture Professor Oak's contemplation in mere moments. Compared to that, Hikaru and his Pokémon's pace was considerably slower. Artifact, large ancient stone statue, exquisite, styled after the ruins of Shinto. Description, a statue carved in an ancient style, depicting Giratina in its origin form. The craftsmanship is lifelike, achieving an imitation of ancient aesthetics. Due to its mythological nature, this sculpture is considered a masterpiece. By offering gratitude to the sculpture, one may receive a response from Giratina. Artifact effect, Pillar of Heart and Matter eliminates negative emotions within one's heart and brings order to chaotic lands. This sculpture looks nearly identical to the original at the Shinto ruins. Absolutely perfect. Giratina's mental link with Hikaru remained intact. As it viewed the sculpture through Hikaru's soul, it felt the anger that had been festering within it for centuries gradually dissipate. The negative emotions that had plagued it for so long faded not through suppression, but by allowing its thoughts to become clearer, granting it a newfound perspective of the world it resided in. A wave of gratitude surged within Giratina's heart. It was a feeling it had not experienced for hundreds, perhaps thousands, of years. Ever since the fall of Shinto, this emotion had never resurfaced within it. The gratitude stone wishes to offer gratitude, to you as well. Bring this sculpture to the distortion world. Using a large reflective surface, simply call upon me, and I shall be by your side. A large reflective surface Giratina was likely referring to something akin to a lake. However, the area near the workshop only had a small stream. But Hikaru quickly devised an alternative solution. Among the materials he had previously purchased, there was a thin film. By spreading it on the ground and pouring water over it, he could create an artificial reflective surface. With that, a simple gateway was completed. The water's surface shimmered with a vortex of shadowy energy. With Regirock's assistance, everyone leaped into the mirror-like portal. In an instant, they arrived at the abandoned workshop within the distortion world. Doublade's spirits lifted immediately. The abandoned workshop was brimming with ghostly energy far richer than that of room number 4. It was a perfect dwelling place for it, like settling atop a grand tombstone. However, there was a problem. Dao Blade suddenly turned its gaze toward Giratina's sculpture. When Regirock placed the statue within the abandoned workshop, the chaotic ghostly energies that had been swirling erratically immediately calmed down. The energy became more orderly and easier for ghost-type Pokémon to absorb. As the doors of the abandoned workshop creaked open, Giratina was already waiting. The Pokémon present aside from Regirock were seeing the renegade Pokémon for the first time. While curiosity filled their eyes, they couldn't help but feel a hint of nervousness. Fear not. We are all friends. If this had been the past, Giratina would never have spoken such words. But now, only gratitude remained in its heart. The fury it had carried for so long was finally subsiding. Its joy at reconnecting with the descendants of Shinto extended even to the other Pokémon around it. As for Regirock, Giratina didn't know it well, but it was still grateful for its efforts in transporting the sculpture. Hikaru's expression was slightly odd. Ever since meeting him, this once infamously violent dragon had been far less aggressive than it was in the games. But that was a good thing. Staying angry all the time wasn't healthy, after all. This is your sculpture. My carved artifacts possess unique power. The effect of this one is to eliminate your negative emotions and bring stability to chaotic lands. For example, Hikaru's gaze shifted toward the sculpture. The Giratina sculpture began to glow faintly. From the statue at its center, waves of energy rippled outward. The chaotic forces surrounding the abandoned workshop and its floating island began to subside. Order was restored, and the area radiated a new vitality, as if life itself had returned to the once withered land. Chapter 119. The transformation of the distortion world was something even Giratina hadn't anticipated. This world represented the opposite of reality, a realm filled with dark matter and chaotic forces. Everything here was intrinsically linked to the real world where order prevailed. The distortion world existed as its warped and destructive counterpart. But if this world could also become beautiful, Unbelievable. You truly are a descendant of the Shinto lineage, possessing extraordinary power. However, if the distortion world becomes a place of beauty, wouldn't that mean the real world would start to distort? Perhaps due to the fading of its anger and negativity, Giratina began to seriously consider the connection between the real world and the distortion world. This shift in thought was something that was only supposed to happen in Giratina and the Sky Warrior, where Giratina actively worked to restore the distortion world. Hikaru, reminded by Giratina's concern, decided to return to the real world to verify the effects of the sculpture. Since the statue only influenced the abandoned workshop's surroundings, if any imbalance occurred, then the traveler's workshop, its real-world counterpart, should exhibit signs of disorder as well. But nothing was amiss. Hikaru walked around the workshop after crossing back through the water's surface, finding no abnormalities. Reassured, he returned to the distortion world and shared his thoughts with Giratina. The correspondence between matter and its counterpart may be governed by the fundamental logic of the world itself. The ancient world was vastly different from the modern one, yet humanity has continuously reshaped its environment to make it suitable for life. Perhaps the same principle applies to the distortion world. The sculpture hasn't altered the underlying structure of this realm. It still supports the real world and maintains its connection, but instead of chaotic instability, it now presents a usable, harmonious space. If that's the case, then this has been an immense help. Hearing Hikaru's reasoning, Giratina agreed. If the real world remained unchanged, then it was indeed possible to reshape the distortion world using these sculptures. After all, Giratina had been banished here. Even though Arceus had never given it a direct command, and despite knowing that this world was meant to support reality, no Pokémon would willingly reside in such a twisted, chaotic, void-like existence. Even if that was the role forced upon it. But, if it could transform this broken world into something of its own design, then maybe, just maybe, it would come to love this place after all. Through their soul connection, Giratina's emotions and thoughts faintly resonated within Hikaru's mind. You're right. If this world becomes something better, you'll be like a god ruling over it, won't you? The distortion world was once a realm of disorder, but now, you have the chance to shape it however you wish. For example, cultivating land? Planting trees? I'm not sure what you'd enjoy doing, but these are just some ideas. You speak the truth. For the first time, I am truly experiencing this world, and it's all thanks to you. Giratina landed upon the floating island where the abandoned workshop stood, sensing the difference between this place and the other islands. In the past, it had never perceived that the distortion world could possess a side of such beauty. Now, it could finally examine its true nature. If it placed sculptures on every floating island, then it could transform the entire distortion world into a paradise of its own design. But this world was vast, far larger than it had ever imagined. A sense of anticipation stirred within Giratina. Perhaps, this world held advantages even over those of Dialga and Palkia. Unlike their domains, which were endless voids of temporal distortions and spatial flux, the distortion world contained real matter. Could one even call those places worlds when they were so empty? I have thought of a way to defy Arceus. Giratina spoke, and Hikaru blinked in surprise. So, it still hadn't given up on resisting Arceus? Had. Now that my mind is clear, I have realized that resistance doesn't always have to mean direct combat. Back in the days of Hisui, I failed. I attempted to collaborate with humans, only to be thwarted at every turn. Thinking back, those mysterious figures who stood in my way, perhaps they were Arceus' doing. And maybe, the same applies to you. But now, I understand something. If your sculptures truly have the power to reshape this world, then what if we work together to make this realm even more beautiful than the real world? If the very place of my exile becomes greater than reality, then haven't I already defied Arceus? It cast me away to this forsaken wasteland, yet I shall transform it into a paradise. At that moment, I can look upon Arceus and declare it was wrong about me from the very beginning. If it bestowed upon me the domain of creation, then I shall prove that I am worthy of it. And when that day comes, perhaps even Arceus itself will feel shame for its judgment, perhaps it may even apologize. Hikaru. That was actually a brilliant plan. Sure, outright punching Arceus would be immensely satisfying and would certainly require less thought, but proving it wrong through sheer accomplishment was just as gratifying. Everyone assumed this world was a barren wasteland, a realm of exile. But what if it became a thriving utopia instead? If the day came when humans and Pokémon recognized Giratina's achievement, even the other legendary dragons would be forced to acknowledge its success. Dialga and Pakia, those two mindless brutes who only knew how to fight, would be utterly shamed. So, I must thank you. For the second time, Giratina expressed gratitude toward Hikaru. Though it understood that the gratitude stone had likely influenced its emotions, this feeling wasn't unpleasant at all. If you had not arrived in this world by chance, I never would have formed this spiritual connection with you. None of this would have happened. All life is destined to encounter others, and through those encounters, new possibilities are born. I am beginning to comprehend those words. Shinto's wisdom has touched me in ways I never understood before. Now, it is time for something new to be born. I extend to you a sincere invitation to become my soul-bound companion. Giratina's golden armor plates on its cheeks unfolded, revealing the lustrous platinum orb, which floated into Hikaru's hands, radiating a brilliant glow. Precious material, platinum orb. Description: when held by Giratina, this luminous orb enhances the power of its dragon and ghost-type moves. New knowledge acquired: platinum cultivation enhances your ability to train dragon and ghost-type Pokémon, significantly boosting their power. New crafting ability: Ruin Craft. Using materials from the distortion world, you can create corresponding models. The environment within these models will shift according to your design, but specific materials are required for transformation. Hint: when combined with secret power, ruin blocks can be used to construct maze floors. Additionally, by using the orb crafting technique to create the Grand Chamber Orb, maze floors can be converted into designated rooms. Chapter 120. Hi everyone, it's Salem. The event will start Saturday. Now I will tell you how to participate on it so you can choose which fanfic you want to be translated. This time there will be 2 challengers. A Naruto and a Bleach fanfic, both I checked them and they both looks promising. The event consists on 3 rounds of challenges. 1. The likes round: if the post gets 100 likes it will earn a point, both can win that point, will start Saturday, this is in Patreon. 2. The Power Stones round: if the fanfic gets 1500 Power Stones in web novel gets a point. Both can win that point, will start Sunday. 3. The Reviews round: if the fanfic gets 50 reviews on web novel it will get a point. Both can win that point, will start Sunday. Now what would happen if both reach the 3 points? I will pick both. The true both are fun so I kinda don't care if both win, ha. So if you want, try to make me pick both by doing the event. Also as bonus, if any of the FICs get into the top 10 in web novel I will make it a double chapter schedule for that FIC. Anyway, I thought it was going to be fun to do an event where you all get to participate, and if the events it's successful I may do more of them, for more new FICs or for current ones. Thanks you all for reading this, and I will see you later. Ciao. In the Pokémon world, the term maze refers to the world of Mystery Dungeon, a realm where humans have disappeared, leaving only Pokémon to inhabit it. This world is filled with various labyrinthine landscapes, akin to the dungeons commonly found in many games. Hikaru had long theorized that, given the existence of parallel worlds, the Mystery Dungeon world was likely one of them. Recently, he had been acquiring numerous crafting techniques related to that world, further solidifying his belief. The Ruin Craft technique he had just obtained mentioned the Grand Chamber Orb, a tool native to the Mystery Dungeon world. This mysterious orb could break down maze walls, converting them into independent rooms. There were many other orbs with strange effects, and if items from the Mystery Dungeon world were brought into the standard Pokémon world, they would likely cause drastic changes in battle and training dynamics. Now that I've learned how to create mazes, doesn't that make me like a dungeon master? Hikaru mused. This ability to artificially generate maze-like structures exceeded the scope of a normal craftsman's skill. But then again, he had long since surpassed conventional craftsmanship, wielding spiritual energy and mystical inscriptions. This was no longer just a simple craft, it was something far greater. Hikaru was growing more and more excited. You seem eager. Giratina, linked to Hikaru's soul, sensed his excitement but couldn't understand why. I was just thinking about something interesting after receiving the Platinum Orb, Hikaru replied. In fact, this power might even benefit you. Let's test it out now. Scanning the surroundings, Hikaru selected a 3-tiered floating island. Can you take me around that floating island for a closer look? This was a strange request, but Giratina had no reason to refuse. Hikaru climbed onto Giratina's head, circling the island as he carefully memorized its terrain. He even collected some of the island's soil before returning to the abandoned workshop. What are you planning? Giratina watched curiously as Hikaru began shaping the soil into a model. I want to make that floating island more interesting. This is just an experiment. Thanks to the Ruincraft ability, Hikaru's sculpting skills had become even more refined. Combined with his existing expertise, he quickly crafted a detailed miniature replica of the floating island right down to its distorted structures. According to the knowledge from Ruincraft, if this were the real world, altering an area would require extensive materials to reconstruct the environment. Hikaru even considered using this technique to create customized habitats for different Pokémon in the forest. But in the distortion world, materials were abundant, especially ghost-type materials, which were practically everywhere. There was no need to gather anything manually. Placing the floating island model beside a newly shaped terrain model, Hikaru proceeded to the next step. Dao Blade, use secret power on the model. Dao Blade was puzzled but had grown used to Hikaru's unusual requests, which always led to remarkable results. Without hesitation, it drew its blades, crossing them before spinning like a windmill. Secret power. Normally, secret power wouldn't work on something as small as a dirt model. However, due to Hikaru's craftsmanship, the model had established a close connection with the real floating island. Although it seemed like secret power was affecting the model, it was actually being used on the island itself. Rumble. A miraculous transformation began. The model emitted a brilliant glow, and simultaneously, the actual floating island underwent a visible change. The dark green ground surged upward, forming an unusual hill with a cavern entrance. From within, an eerie, mystical light shone outward. Intrigued, Giratina floated toward the island, peering into the cave with its massive head only to be stunned by what it saw. Inside the newly formed cave was a vast chamber illuminated by an unnatural light, resembling a hidden valley. However, since the distortion world was inherently barren, there were only a few inverted plants present, making the valley appear somewhat desolate. But most importantly, the interior was far larger than it appeared from the outside. How did you do this? By using a special material to create a model. These models are directly linked to the area they represent. Secret power restructures the internal space of the island, erasing the original cavern to form an entirely new space, Hikaru explained. This is a unique craft that I can only use thanks to your platinum orb. Giratina was delighted. So it was a power granted by its blessing? The wisdom of the Shinto people truly was reliable. This resembles Palkia's ability. The ability to compress and reshape space immediately brought Palkia to mind. However, Hikaru had considered that the mystery dungeon world's mazes seemed to form naturally. Though Palkia had appeared in the storyline before, the creation of dungeons didn't seem directly related to it. I call these newly created internal spaces mazes. Depending on the materials used, different types of maze sections can be made: dirt paths, lava tunnels, chasms, walls, cliffs, grasslands, water zones, mountain trails, deserts. This time, I only made a basic dirt floor area. Mazes can also randomly generate traps. With my crafting techniques, I can create and place them as needed. Additionally, special items can be used to convert maze areas into different types of rooms or Pokémon habitats. In the distortion world, creating rooms might not seem particularly useful after all, there were hardly any Pokémon here besides Giratina. But at that moment, Giratina's thoughts began to shift. If Giratina could govern this world, bringing order and beauty to its chaotic landscape, then perhaps other Pokémon could one day reside here just as Arceus oversaw the real world. I see. I have now thought of a new way to reshape the distortion world. Perhaps in the future, more Pokémon will come to live here. But before that can happen, I must make this world habitable. For the future transformation of this world, I shall rely on you as well. Oh, no problem. I'll be visiting often anyway. Hikaru was genuinely interested in reshaping the distortion world. The sheer abundance of raw materials here made it an ideal place for experimentation. What about the statues? Should we place one on every floating island? If that is possible, it would be ideal. But there is no rush. Rebuilding a world takes time. With that decision made, Hikaru turned his focus to the abandoned workshop. Given the intense presence of ghost-type energy, the area was rich in spectral materials. He decided to craft a few special items related to ghost-type Pokémon. Then, something else caught his attention. Are you thinking of evolving? Hikaru turned toward Dao Blade. Dao Blade had initially planned to master Sacred Sword through brick break training. However, after several days of practice, it had made little progress. With so many other things happening, it had barely scratched the surface of understanding the technique. In that case, keep practicing Sacred Sword first. Once you've mastered it, then we'll consider evolving. Just then, an idea struck Hikaru so sudden that it felt like a light bulb lit up above his head. His crafting techniques could create specialized training environments. If Pokémon trained in suitable conditions, they could grow and develop their moves more efficiently. So why not create a fighting maze? In the Pokémon world, such a place would likely be called a dojo. Fighting-type moves were strong against rock, ice, steel, normal, and dark types. While ice and steel were harder to acquire, large rocks were plentiful, especially with Regirock around. A fighting dojo filled with boulders would be the perfect training ground for Doublade to master Sacred Sword. Additionally, Lilligant would also benefit from training in such a place. If you seek to train ghost-type moves, this world is the best place for it. However, for fighting-type techniques, I do know of one method. Giratina suddenly spoke. It turned its gaze toward Doublade, its crimson dragon eyes flickering with a peculiar blue energy. A ripple spread outward. Doublade tensed up, sensing something strange. It turned toward Giratina with a puzzled look. Do you feel it? This is aura, the energy of the fighting type. Unlike physical strikes and blade techniques, it can be strengthened through the refinement of one's spirit. By gathering aura and releasing it, one can perform the move Aura Sphere. While all Pokémon and humans possess aura, few can fully control its power. As a result, only a select number of Pokémon can naturally learn Aura Sphere. However, even if you cannot master the move itself, training your aura perception can help you learn other fighting-type moves. It is a manifestation of one's spirit and determination.
Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200+ audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.